Welcome to Audio Novel. If you enjoy my work, don't forget to like and subscribe. To access advanced chapters or support the author, visit their official page, link is in the description. Thank you for being part of this journey. Let's dive into the story. In Danmachi as Arthur Leywin. Chapter 1, beginning. So you killed me because you need inspiration for your new fanfic? Asked the recently dead soul while looking at the ROB in front of him. Yup, that's about it, so you have two options. First, you decline my offer, and I will send your soul to hell, or you accept my offer. Said the ROB with a neutral face. Well, I don't have a choice here, so how will the reincarnation work? Do I get wishes or something? Asked the soul, hopeful it would quickly get overpowered. Well, yes, but actually not. You have two choices. First, you get sent to a random world with a few wishes, or you spin the character wheel, but you get to choose the world. Soul POV. So I get to choose. My powers is good, but the possibility of the world being some messed up world is high, or I pick the world with the possibility of getting useless powers. Remembering the world that shall not be named, I quickly chose the safe option and answered the ROB. I chose the wheel. After I said that, ROB started murmuring something that I could not hear, but something told me I had made a good choice. After a while, he snapped his fingers, and a wheel appeared with different names. I could see characters like Rimuru Tempest, Shigo Kageyama, Kuro-sensei, and many others. So, kid, let's run down how this will work. I spin the wheel, and the person it lands on will be your future, so make sure to make an interesting story because I need to win the competition. But first, choose your world. Ignoring the competition comment, I started thinking, I need a world where I can survive and become strong even if I get a weak character. Oh, and a world with magic, because why would I reincarnate in a normal world when I can go to a world with magic? After thinking for a while, I decided on Danmachi. Why? Because even if I get some weak character, I can get strong with the fauna, and if we don't think about the one-eyed black dragon, Evelus, and some adventurer thugs, it should be easy to survive. If I get a strong character, it will be even easier. I want to go to Danmachi. After I said that, the wheel started spinning by itself and went past many good characters, but it began to slow down after a while. Minoru Mineta Mumen Rider Ichiya Khan. As I saw it stop, I wanted to break everything, but my shitty luck started to work, and the wheel moved on the last bit and landed on Arthur Leywin. TSK, I was hoping you would become a teddy bear, but it seems you had some luck today. Anyway, I hope you will make an excellent story for me, and with that, I welcomed the darkness with a smile. I started to regain my senses. I could feel the cold, and when I tried to move, nothing happened when I opened my eyes. All I could see were trees. Seeing I was alone in the middle of nowhere, I decided to do what every intelligent person would scream until someone found me. After what seemed like hours, I heard some footsteps, which could mean two things. First, someone will save me, or two, I will become some beast's snack. A child. I saw a familiar older man, but I could not remember where I saw him. He seemed to think about something before picking me up. It seems your parents left you here, so what do you say? Want to come to live with my granddaughter and me? I didn't know if he was stupid or expected me to reply, but for some reason, I felt I could trust him, so I did my best to answer by giving him a laugh. Well, it seems like little Bella will get a brother, but what should I name you? He looked at me for a while, then at the blanket I was tugged in, and after a while, said, Arthur Leywin, it seems your parents left you with a good name. He started walking with me, but then something clicked. Belle, the main protagonist of this world, granddaughter Bella, old man. That means, oh no. Before I could think more about it, my eyes started to get heavy, and sleep overtook me. Arthur Leywin POV. It has been 2 years since I was reincarnated and adopted by Zeus, or as I call him, Grandpa. I first learned that Belle doesn't exist in this world, but there is something more dangerous. My cute little sister Bella, this little thing is the most adorable little creature. Her first word was border when she said that Grandpa started sulking in the corner while muttering something about life and already being a lady killer, but I didn't pay attention because Bella's first word was brother. I swore an oath to myself. If someone mortal or God did something to my cute innocent little sister, I would go full and grey on them. For my appearance, I thought I would look exactly like the original Arthur Leywin, but I didn't have the auburn hair or blue eyes. I looked like Arthur while using Realm Heath with white hair and purple eyes, and to be honest, I liked it because Bella and I looked more like real siblings. During those years, I also started meditating and forming my mana core. Because Rob reincarnated me as Arthur Leywin, I got all his powers, but to access them, I need to create my mana core, so that's what I have been doing in my spare time. Still, something that bothers me is the assimilation process, but that's for future me to worry about. Over a year has passed, but I'm finally done forming my mana core. Only the last few particles are left, and I'm meditating away from our house, so Grandpa doesn't see me forming my mana core. Him being a god and all, should probably tell him I'm different, but I could lie my way through, saying I somehow awakened my magic. Of course, it would not be a complete lie, so he should not know it, but... boom. After a while, I looked around and saw the ground and a few trees destroyed, but that didn't matter now. So instead, I concentrated on the spot where my core should be, and there it was, a black mana core I had spent almost 3 years making. I could make it faster, but I wanted to spend time with Grandpa and Bella, so the next thing on my to-do list is to progress my mana core and begin the assimilation process for the beast will I could feel attached to my core. That means I could only progress my mana core level once the assimilating was complete, but I still had 11 years to get stronger. As I started walking home, I tripped over something and fell headfirst to the ground. Erg, everything was blown away by the explosion. What did I step on? As I looked down there, I saw a rock, so I picked it up, but then it hit me. It wasn't a rock but something I didn't expect to see in this world. An egg, more specifically, the egg Arthur got from Sylvia. This was also the day I changed my oath to protect not only my cute little sister but also my cute little daughter. Chapter 2, Assimilation. Arthur Leywin POV. When I stepped inside our house, I could hear Grandpa cooking dinner in the kitchen while little Bella was playing with her toys. Finally, she seemed to notice my arrival and ran to hug me. Big brother, read me another story. Ah yes, my little sister is already addicted to the hero stories Grandpa has been reading to us, and when he is busy working or doing something else, I will read them. But, of course, a 3-year-old being able to read perfectly would be suspicious. So, I would pretend not always to know some words, but during the past years, I always acted to learn things fast to avoid suspicions from Grandpa. So I also played with my toys, mainly my wooden sword, which I would try to learn how to use. I seemed to know how to wield the sword, which I believed was ROB that somehow gave me the fighting experience of Arthur Leywin without giving me his actual memories, so it felt like I knew how to use a sword, but at the same time, I knew nothing. I was broken out of my thoughts when Grandpa noticed my arrival. Ah, Arthur, you're back. Did you find a wife? But, of course, Grandpa is the same as always. What normal grandparent would tell a 3-year-old kid that they should make a harem? I understand that this is Danmachi, but I never understood the idea of having a harem. I would be happy to have just one. I decided to joke around with him and answered. Of course, and soon you will get a grandchild. I said that while checking on the egg in my pocket, but Grandpa seemed to stare at me, and then I realized that he could not feel any lie coming from me, and I knew I needed to fix it. Hee hee, you should see your face right now, Gramps. But when I was walking in the forest today, I found a dead black cat with scales that was protecting this egg, so I decided to take it with me and take care of it like a child. Hee hee. He seemed to sigh in relief, but the big question was how would I even do it? I'm 3. I haven't seen a cat with scales in my whole life. It seems this world still holds many mysteries. He said while looking at the egg and knew I didn't tell the truth about how I found the egg, so I decided to divert the topic from my soon-to-be dragon daughter. So, Gramps, did something happen today? Now that you ask, a green-haired swordsman got lost and started asking for directions, but I got distracted for a while, and he disappeared. Green-haired swordsman. I remember someone like that, but I lost the memory of him. Better not think about it. Let's not worry about him. He probably found what he was looking for while I will prepare the table for dinner. Bella seemed to agree after hearing about the food, so Grandpa returned to the kitchen to finish the food while I prepared the table. A few days have passed. Grandpa is out and working while Bella and I are home alone. I'm meditating, trying to improve my core, while Bella is looking at the egg on my bedside table with sparkling eyes. During the few days, I looked at my core, and the beast will attach to it. I found something interesting. The beast will hasn't fully connected to my core, and it seems it is getting close to my core. I guess ROB wanted me to have time to progress my mana core before I assimilate with the will. So I spent the last few days meditating and trying to learn mana rotation. The technique allows the user to continuously absorb mana from the atmosphere while moving or in combat and will be crucial when I become an adventurer. So I continued my meditation, purifying my core while Grandpa was out, playing with Bella, and trying to get used to using a sword while pretending to be playing. This routine continued for the following months. I woke up feeling like my whole body was burning inside out. The last 6 months flew by. I'm currently 4, and today is the day my beast will fully connected to my core. So now I need to start the assimilation process. It is easy but will take a few years to complete. The assimilation is a process of slowly dispersing mana from the core and seeping it into the body, letting the muscles and bones absorb mana. It's a slow process and requires meditation. It took Arthur 3 years to completely assimilate his body with Sylvia's will. But thanks to me being solid red with cracks, it should allow me to finish it quicker. Usually, I would start it now, but not today. That's because today is Bella's birthday and the merchant will come to the village, so I need to get a birthday present for Bella. The pain in my body is nothing. Getting a gift for my cute little sister is my top priority. So I quickly put on some clothes and went outside. I didn't spend much time outside. I was mainly training at home, but that didn't mean I never went out. Of course, I needed to keep the boys away from my sister. Does that make me an overprotective brother? Probably, but who wouldn't protect that cute little rabbit? Arriving at the center of the village, I could already see the merchant cart. This merchant often comes back here while coming back from Orario. Sometimes he comes here with his daughter Lucy. She and Bella became good friends and have the same hobby of reading hero stories. He seems like a good guy and often tells me about what is happening in Orario. Hello, Mr. Vince. Oh, Arthur here to ask more about the city. Not today. I need to get a present for Bella. I see I have something she would love. He looked for something inside the cart and returned with a book. This is a new book I got. It's about a hero for fun. The kids in Orario love it. It looked like something Bella would love, so I bought it, and after asking some questions about the adventures like if someone leveled up and other stuff, I went home. Let's say she told me I was her favorite brother. Well, I'm her only brother, but still. Chapter 3, KYU. Arthur Leywin. I was sitting on a stone in the forest just outside the village, letting the mana from my core seep and fuse into my muscles and bones. It's a slow process that took me 3 years to complete, but it will be necessary for my future. How will my mana core level equate to a fauna level? Still, with the assimilation process almost complete, I should be able to compete with a veteran level 1 adventurer and pull a good fight against a veteran level 2. Fauna is the grace given by gods and goddesses to their familia members. Therefore, adventurers and supporters can gather Excelia to raise their status and grow stronger. That is an easy way to get strong, but the problem is that if something happens to the god, you become a normal person again. The god could not update your status or lock the fauna, so I want to get stronger on my own first to have a backup if something like that happens. But back to the assimilation, I'm almost complete, and I only need to send a large amount of mana into my core. The problem is that I don't have anyone to do it for me, so I came up with a stupid idea. By focusing the surrounding mana in the air around me, augmenting myself with some of it, and forcing it into my core. That leads to this moment, focusing on the mana in the air, I start slowly pulling it towards me. Being an augmenter, not a conjurer, this was a complicated process with my current core level, but after a while, I had enough mana around myself, so I pushed it into my core. Gray. I yelled in pain as my whole body was in pain. It was like my body was filled with magma. This continued for the next few seconds and disappeared as fast as it appeared. My body was covered in sweat, and my eyes felt heavy. Then, before I could even do anything, everything went black. I woke up with a slight pain, probably from the stone I passed out on. Looking at the sky, I could tell a few hours had passed, so I pushed myself onto my legs and went home so Grandpa would not worry about me, and that was when it hit me. Sylvie. I started running home, remembering the egg on my bedside table and what should happen now after the first phase of my beast will activated. Without even thinking, I augmented my body and ran home. Without slowing down, I entered the house and ran to my room, not bothering about the surprised look Grandpa had when he saw an ordinary boy without a blessing run at such a high speed. But when I saw the colorful egg in front of me, I stopped. The crack started to get bigger, and before I could do anything else I could see her looking at me. Q. The little dragon said with a confused look before jumping from the table and biting me on my arm. A mark burned itself on my arm while Sylvie looked at me with a smile that could rival my sister's. Q. Mama. I knew she bonded with me, and we could talk in our minds, but still, it was a weird feeling. Q. Mama. No, 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 I'm a boy, call me Papa. Q. Papa. Yes, Papa, and your name is Sylvie. Q. Sylvie. After hearing her name, she started to jump around on my bed while I looked at her with a smile before a voice snapped me out. Arthur. I looked to my side and saw Grandpa watching Sylvie and me, probably still confused, and we just looked at each other without saying anything. Thankfully the silence was broken when my sister stuck her head through the door and saw Sylvie, and her eyes started to sparkle with stars. What is this? It's so cute. She went to look at Sylvie, and they began to look at each other, Bella with excitement and Sylvie with confusion. This is Sylvie. She just hatched from the egg, say hi Sylv. Q. Hi. Bella started to pet Sylvie on the head, which Sylvie seemed to enjoy, but when I looked at Grandpa, he seemed to want to talk to me about something. I was sitting at the table with Grandpa on the other side. He looked at me for a while and then said, Arthur, listen, ever since you were little, I knew you were special, and for the past 4 years, I could feel something different about you, but today when you returned home, you ran with speed comparable to a veteran level 1 adventurer. After he said it, I started thinking of the best way to explain it. Running while augmenting my body maybe wasn't the best idea, but when I remembered Sylvie I didn't think about anything and just run. So I decided to tell him about my magic and how I found Sylvie. It is something I just knew ever since I was born. It's like ever since I was born I had the knowledge on how to do some things, like when I hold the sword, it is like I know how to use it. But, at the same time, it is the first time I have held the sword, and it is similar to magic. So during the past years, I have been training. He looked at me for a while, probably thinking about what I said, and then answered. I see. But what about the egg? I know it is something special, you ran straight to it as if you knew it would hatch today. I was hoping he would not ask about Sylvie because it would be bad if I said that ROB just gave me the egg of a dragon that Arthur Leywin should get from what is a deity in that world, so I just told the truth. After training one day with my magic, it just appeared in front of me. Grandpa seemed to think about it for a while and didn't ask more questions. He probably knew I didn't tell him all the details, but it seemed he didn't want to pressure me to tell him about it. Could you show me the magic? I would show this magic in the dungeon so it would not hurt me if Grandpa knew about it, so I placed my hand in front of me and created some fire, and changing the concentration of mana, the flame turned blue. It took a lot from me at my current stage, but I wanted to show off. I looked at the blue flame and then at Grandpa, but for some reason, he seemed surprised and then turned to a serious look. Then I remembered how the magic system works in this world. There are 2 types of magic: congenital magic, which is based on one's own ability and race, and acquired magic, which is based on the fauna given by the gods and goddesses. Most spells require a specific chant to activate, except for no-chant magic like Firebolt, and the longer the chant, the stronger the magic is. So for me, to create such an intense flame without any chant isn't normal, especially for someone without a blessing. Arthur, I haven't seen any adventurers with magic like yours during my days. When you master it, you will probably be the strongest fire mage in Genkai. I thought about it and then showed Grandpa some more of my magic. Unfortunately, I haven't unlocked the element's deviant forms, but I could still show off. Grandpa, I'm not only limited to fire. After saying that, I created wind and water on my left hand while creating fire and earth on my right hand. Grandpa just looked at the 4 elements floating around my hands and laughed. Ha ha ha, for all the years in this world, there seem to be so many mysteries left. I could understand Grandpa's reaction in this world. People naturally have between 1 to 3 slots for magic and can typically only learn 1 magic per slot. However, most people tend never to have any magic appear. Filling one's first magic slot is somewhat hard to achieve, while filling the second one is harder, and the third one is even harder to fill than the second. In rare cases, a third magic is not obtained, no matter what. It is also possible to use magic without a falna, though it requires the user to undergo training, and magic used without a falna is weak compared to magic used with one. So for a boy to use such magic is unbelievable even if I just displayed the elements, and let's not talk about when I unlock the deviants. Listen here, Arthur. Many gods would go to war to have someone with magic like yours. You could become the strongest falnaless mortal, but you won't win against first-class adventurers, especially if a god sends a whole familia after you. So what will you do now? Grandpa spoke in a serious tone, which does not often happen, considering he always tries to act like the funny grandpa, so I knew how serious this topic was. After thinking for a while, I decided what I needed to do. I, of course, wanted to stay and watch Bella grow up and then go on an adventure together, but I needed to be strong. When I become a Wittycore mage, I will be one of the strongest mortals in this world, and Sylvie needs to be stronger. To do that, she needs to get magic stones, and the best way to get them is in the dungeon. I need to be stronger. Strong enough to protect everyone I care about. I'm no hero that would save every single person, but I'm gonna do everything to protect the people I care about. I paused for a while and looked Grandpa in the eyes. I've decided to become an adventurer. Chapter 4, Preparation. Arthur Leywin. 3 months have passed since my talk with Grandpa. He wasn't against me becoming an adventurer, even if I'm only 7 right now, but we decided that my journey to Orario would start after my 8th birthday. During this time, I spent more time with Bella. She and Sylvie became good friends. It could be because of their similar personalities, especially regarding food. Sylvie also started calling her Auntie Bella, and her speech improved from single words to complete sentences. I haven't been completely slacking the whole time either. I continued to purify my core and broke to dark orange a few weeks ago. While sparring with Grandpa, he said that the way I use my sword on instinct is good, but I should learn how to wield it properly before going to the dungeon. I agree with him, but I wonder why he didn't teach Belle anything in the original Danmachi. That kid could have died on his very first day. So as a good brother, I asked Grandpa to teach her the basics, and I taught her how to deal with boys while I was not around just to be safe. But back to my training. Now that I didn't need to hide my abilities, I started training outside the house and progressed with my beast will. I still could not enter the integrate phase, but when it came to my acquire phase, I successfully used static void stopping time for almost 10 seconds. Something that confused me was that I felt more confident and stronger every time I used it. I don't remember beast wills affecting someone's personality in debate, but I haven't finished the novel while I was still alive, so maybe something like that happened. Another 6 months flew by, with me following the same routine of waking up, spending time with Grandpa and Bella, meditating, and sparring with Grandpa, but now I'm standing in front of Bella's room. Well, she got angry at Grandpa and me after we told her I would leave for Orario soon. She also wanted to go with me, but we told her that she was too young, considering we were physically the same age. It's stupid, but we wanted her to be older and capable of protecting herself before going. I sighed and knocked on her door. Bella, it's me. She didn't answer, but I could hear some rustling in her room, and after a moment, the door opened. She had red puffy eyes, probably from crying, and what should have been an angry look on her face, but it just looked so cute. Listen, Bella, I know you want to go to Orario, but you still need to learn how to defend yourself and fight monsters. But Grandpa let you go. Grandpa let me go because I could protect myself, but you still need to learn. But brother could protect me. I'm not strong enough to protect someone yet. So that's why I'm going to Orario. But I talked with Grandpa, and we decided he let you go when you were 12. Really? She quickly stopped sulking and was happy, and before she could think about it again, I tried to divert her attention to something else. Of course, but we should go to the kitchen before Sylvie eats all the meat. After I said that she had a horrified expression and ran toward the kitchen, I could only watch with a smile. I knew she would not be this little innocent Bella forever, but I won't let her suffer as Belle would. When I stepped into the kitchen, I could see Bella and Sylvie fighting over a piece of meat, and I could only chuckle at this sight. In 3 months, I would leave for Orario and not see her and Grandpa for a long time. We decided that I would visit them every few months, but still, some part of me wanted to stay with them, with my family. I stopped thinking about it. This is something I need to do. What I need right now is real-life experience and a way for SYLV to get stronger. The surface monster helped her a bit. But, she would still be considered a weak monster, a level 1 could defeat. Today is the day of my 8th birthday, and my journey will begin soon. My core is at the light orange stage with cracks. With this, I can break through to dark yellow during my travel to Orario. I opened the door, and before I could fully walk out of my room, a white missile slammed into me. Happy birthday, big brother. Ugh. Bella, you're too old to do this. She giggled and pulled me towards the kitchen where Grandpa was, and when I stepped in, I could see my favorite dishes and a cake. I'm going to miss this. Happy birthday, Arthur. Grandpa hugged me before we sat to eat. He gave me his present. Now that you have decided to become an adventurer, you need a real sword. The sword was in a matte black scabbard, and when I drew it out, what greeted me was a straight narrow blade that was thin like a rapier but had a double edge, making it fit for slashing and thrusting. Thank you, Grandpa, I love it. I couldn't stop looking at it. Even if this wasn't a first-class weapon, I smiled like a child. This was my first time holding a real sword, not just a simple wooden one. After doing a few test swings, I was satisfied. It felt perfect from the handle size to the point of balance, so as a last test I decided to infuse it with mana, and it worked. Deciding to try 2 elements at once, it started to shake and I knew if I continued it would break, so I stopped. We spent the rest of the day together having fun, and when night fell, I could barely sleep. Now I'm standing outside our house while looking at the sky. I could not hold my excitement even if I were sad to leave Grandpa and Bella. Bella was standing beside Grandpa with SYLV in her arms while crying, and Grandpa had a sad smile. I crouched a bit to be at eye level with Bella and then said, "Don't cry. I'm going to visit for your birthday and bring lots of stories with your favorite heroes. Promise." Promise. She was still sad but had a slight smile. Giving Grandpa a hug, I picked SYLV from Bella. She jumped on my head while I tried my best not to cry. I spent 8 years with them, and it was hard to leave them now, even if I would visit them again. It wasn't so hard in my past life when I moved out from my parents, but maybe the risk of never returning makes it so hard. Let's not think about it now. You ready, SYLV? Q. Yes, Papa. And so our journey to Orario began. Chapter 5, Orario. Arthur Leywin. So you ready, kid? Yes, and thank you for giving me a ride to Orario, Uncle Vince. The last time Mr. Vince visited our village, I told him about me becoming an adventurer, hoping he would give me a ride to Orario, and it worked. He even allowed me to live with him until I find my own place. Jumping onto the cart, I found a place to sit during our travel. The ride to Orario will take a few hours, so instead of slacking off, I'm gonna use the time to purify my core and maybe break through to the yellow stage. Giving Sylvie some food, so she won't make a commotion during our ride, I began purifying my core, and just like that, we had already arrived. Unfortunately, I could not enter Orario with Vince due to not having citizenship. Still, fortunately, the line was short, so I waited while admiring the few bits of the city I could see from the gate. Finally. Q. Sylvie wasn't patient like me, but it was finally my turn, so I went forward to the guard, and without saying anything, I gave him the papers Grandpa gave me before I left. The documents included information like my name, age, etc. Of course, someone could enter Orario without them, but it took more time, so I'm thankful. Arthur Leywin, age 8, the purpose of visit aspiring adventurer. Everything is good. You can enter. If you continue straight, you will find the Pantheon, where you can register as an adventurer and get all the necessary information about the dungeon and city. Thanking him, I entered through the gate. Not wasting my time, I went straight to the guild. Passing by Dien Set Pharmacy, I started thinking about the potions in this world. The healing potion would work on me and will be necessary when I stay in the dungeon, but what about the mind potion? From how the anime describes mind, it's precisely the same as mana. Is mind just mana with a different name like Excelia and Experience? Q. Papa, stop. I was brought out of my thinking by Sylvie and noticed that I had almost passed the guild building. Thanks, SYLV. Entering the guild, I was greeted by a vast space with counters for adventurers to talk with their advisors and an exchange area. Going to the reception, I was greeted by a silver-haired elf employee. Welcome. I'm Sophie, one of the advisors here. What would your purpose of visit be? Hello, my name is Arthur Leywin, and I'm here to apply here to be an adventurer. She looked at me for a while before handing me the registration paper. If you could fill this form, if you need any help, just ask. Thank you, Miss Sophie. After thanking her, I looked at the form she gave me, and it was simple information like name, age, and adventurer type. There are two types of adventures, one that joins a familia and gets a blessing, and the other is without. Most people use the blessing because you would lose to the weakest monster without it. Maybe if you are a dwarf or a werewolf, you could defeat them with minor injuries, but it's a risk most people wouldn't take. Handing back the form, she looked over it, but when she saw the adventure type I chose, she looked at me with worry. Well, I can understand her, some random kid deciding to enter the dungeon without a falna. Everything is good, but I think you made a mistake with your adventure type. So I'll get you a new foreman. Thank you, Miss Sophie, but everything is correct. I decided to become a falnaless adventurer, and yes, I know the risk. She tried to convince me to change my decision, but I made it clear that I had made up my mind, so after a while, she gave up and stamped my form making me an official adventurer. I'm not planning to join a familia right now because I can grow on my own, but if I did, I would choose a strong god that would help me if some adventures went missing or a god suddenly went back to heaven. In the end, Sophie became my advisor probably because she wanted to change my mind about getting a falna, but sorry to say that won't happen. Q. Papa, food. Yes, SYLV, I'm gonna get you food, just wait. We were on our way to the hostess of fertility to eat. But then I remembered something. Sylvie had been on my head since we entered Orario, but no one had pointed it out. Usually, someone having a monster on their head would attract people's attention, maybe because of Sylvie's white fox form. Everyone sees her as a pet, not a monster. Q. Stop thinking, Papa. I'm starving. Yes, SYLV. Entering through the double doors, we entered the pub and looked around, seeing people eating and drinking while hearing shouts and cheers from the adventurers celebrating some occasion. Welcome to the hostess of fertility. How can I help you, dear customer? I was greeted by a waitress with gray hair and gray eyes. I knew who she was when I saw her, and the weird feeling that washed over my body confirmed it. This was Seer Flova, also known as the goddess Freya. Fortunately, the effect of what I assumed was her charm didn't work on me for some reason, so I answered her. Ah, hello, a table for one. She seemed confused, but for some reason, it changed to happiness. She quickly recomposed herself and guided me to an empty seat near the pub's corner with a sad smile. Here is the menu, sir. Personally, I would recommend today's special. There wasn't any harm in trying it. If I didn't like it, I would order something else next time. Well, I guess I'm gonna try it. Great. May 1 special. She shouted without even leaving and sat at the opposite side of the table without even asking. Of course, some people started looking at us, and the atmosphere felt awkward because of it, but I figured that she saw something special about my soul and wanted to know about me. Q. Papa, she smells weird. Before I could answer, I heard a surprised gasp from Seer and saw her looking at Sylvie. Oh, my, what a cute fox. I didn't notice it before. She said it without leaving her eyes were from Sylvie. Yes, she is shy, so she tends to stay out of people's view, but I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm Arthur Leywin. My advisor recommended this pub, so I decided to check it out. I'm Seer Flova, one of the waitresses at the hostess. We continued our little chat until my food arrived, and Mamma Mia scared Seer away. But if I'm being honest, I was enjoying her company. So after I finished my food, I paid for it and went to the market area to find Vince. Seer Flova/Freya. Serving another customer, I returned to the counter. I was currently disguised as Seer Flova, an identity I used to have a break from my duties as a goddess and can act more like myself without thinking what other people would think. Sadly, today was a boring day without anything special happening, but that's when a boy entered the hostess, a boy I hadn't seen. I'm always interested in new arrivals, you never know when he will appear. I have been looking for him for many years, but I have yet to find him. There were people I thought were him, but in the end, they always fell for the curse of my charm. My odd, someone that would love me for me and not what I represent, will I ever find you? Looking at the boy again, he looked around 10 years old. His hair was a mix of white and wheat blonde at the ends, and he had beautiful lavender eyes. What set him apart from other children was how he carried himself and the aura that surrounded him, an aura of someone above ordinary people, similar to the one we gods or royalty hold. That's when I decided to see his soul, and what I saw surprised me. Not one but two souls, something I had never seen during my stay in Genkai. Something that should be impossible, but it was so mesmerizing, one soul shining bright with hope while the other filled with sadness and an unbearable pain swirling together, making something new. This view is so captivating, I needed to know more. Even if he wasn't my Arthur, I wanted to know how something like that would be possible, and before I knew it, I had already started moving toward him. Welcome to the hostess of fertility. How can I help you, dear customer? I could feel my charm activate and lost hope again, but he just looked at me for a while before answering. Ah, hello, a table for one. He answered as if any other person had asked him, which confused me. Even with my charm activating subconsciously, he should have had a reaction. Could he actually be him? After he placed his order, I heard a cue from somewhere. Looking at where the cue came from, I saw Arthur, and on his head, a white fox was resting while looking at me. Was it a monster? No, it didn't emit the same aura as the monsters I had seen before. Interesting. We continued to talk for a while, but unfortunately, Mia made me leave. Even as a goddess, I was scared of angering her. I still got some information about Arthur, and to my surprise, he decided to be a formless adventurer. I could not lose someone who could finally resist my charm. Deciding to have one of my executives protect him in the shadows, I returned to work. Chapter 6, The Dungeon. Arthur Leywin. I looked at my current outfit, a loose-fitted white shirt beneath a black hooded cloak paired with black boots and pants. The sword I got as a birthday present stabbed to my left. 2 days have passed since my arrival in Orario and breaking through to the dark yellow stage. Spending the previous day adjusting to my new core and buying supplies. I plan to collect the crystals from the first 4 floors and then continue down deeper floors, where Sylvie will start her hunt while I will practice my magic. My swordsmanship is at an acceptable level due to Grandpa's help, but the problem is my magic. I only spent a little bit of time creating and learning spells. Instead, I improved the speed and precision of distributing the mana from my mana core into different parts of the body. I also decided not to use earth magic in the dungeon. The dungeon being alive, the last thing I want to do is to anger it by constantly throwing parts of it. It shouldn't cause a problem if I don't go overboard and use half of the floor as throwing stones, but still, the last thing I want is a juggernaut after me. Better be safe than dead. When we arrived at the first floor of the dungeon, I was greeted by 2 goblins. Wanting to figure out how I would fare against them without using any mana, I drew my sword and dashed straight at them. Decapitating the first with a single slash, and without wasting the momentum, I slashed the other in 2. Q. Food. No, SYLV, you will get your share of stones later. With a sad cue, she returned to resting inside my hood. After I removed the magic stone, their bodies turned into dust. Well, that's nice, would rather have them turn to dust directly after being killed instead of having to look for the core, but what can you do? While I continued killing every goblin, kobold, and dungeon lizard in my way until we arrived at the 5th floor. The walls changed to light green from the previous blue, and more monsters started appearing, but sadly no new monster appeared. Sylvie jumped out of my hood while I put on a mask that hid the lower part of my face. It was a precaution I took to hide my identity. While I didn't care much about hiding my powers, it would be a problem if people recognized me while going through the upper floors and only returned with magic stones only from the first 4 floors. Continuing to kill the monsters that appeared, Sylvie started eating the stones while checking for adventures. While if someone found an adventurer killing monsters, it wouldn't be something suspicious, but a fox following and eating the monster stones would cause a commotion. Even after confirming that, for some reason, people didn't notice Sylvie if they didn't specifically look for her, we were cautious not only for the monster but the people that might appear. Sidestepping the attack from a war shadow, a dark humanoid monster with long arms and 3 sharp claws like knives. I killed it without any problem and looked for the others. Finding the monster was easy due to the mana they emit from their stones, so I augmented myself and sprung to action. The monsters on the 6th floor were easy for me and didn't need me to use anything aside from augmenting myself. But after arriving on the 7th floor, I found my new training partners. leaving the purple moths alive so they could spread the poisonous powder while letting the killer ants spread their pheromones to attract more ants while the needle rabbits tried to attack with their horns. While not being the strongest alone, they would give me a good workout when they combined their forces. Starting by creating a simple wind barrier around myself to repel the poisonous powder and started playing with the killer ants to make them release the pheromone and attract more. This continued for about 20 minutes before I was swarmed by so many killer ants I couldn't stop for even a second without being attacked again. Wounds started to appear on my body because I wasn't fast enough to react, but I was happy. This was the perfect opportunity to learn a new spell. Having unlocked the lighting deviant recently, I wasn't the best at controlling it yet, but what better place to learn than a fight? Ignoring the pain from the wounds, I started to channel a small amount of lighting mana through my nerves. Not seeing any change, I increased the amount, and my vision became more precise. Seeing as the spell worked as it should, I decided to know the limit I could push it to. After 20 minutes of increasing the lighting mana every few minutes until my reaction speed reached the lowest it could. Now that I recreated Thunderclap Impures, I could end this. Augmenting my body again, I started killing the killer ants and needle rabbits faster while Sylvie killed the purple moths. That was a good workout, right, Sylv? I said while stretching. Q. Only you could call being attacked by tons of monsters a good workout, Papa. She said while looking at me with a deadpan expression. Come on, Sylv, it wasn't that bad. I only got a few scratches. She looked at me, probably thinking about something before her eyes widened. Q. Papa, are you maybe a maso? No. I stopped her before she could even finish her sentence. I wasn't like him. This was training, yes, just training, nothing else. Q. They always say that, and the next second you find yourself taking a dip in lava. Ignoring her comment, I walked toward the next floor. Third POV. Unknown to Arthur and Sylvie, a shadow followed them from the moment they entered the dungeon. While nothing happened during their stay on the first floor, it changed after entering the fifth floor. The shadow was ready to save the boy from dying, but what he saw surprised him. The boy fought against monsters he shouldn't be able to compete against. Not to mention the powerful magic he started using during this fight on the seventh floor. While not looking like much just by seeing it, but the mana he emitted while using it was not something level 1 adventurer could do, let alone someone without a blessing. I need to tell Lady Freya about this. The shadow thought while looking at the rookie adventurer if he could even be called a rookie. Then, after his fight on the seventh floor, he asked a question. This confused the shadow, but when he looked again, a white fox was sitting near a pile of magic stones while munching on them. Why is he talking to the fox? Could they actually talk to each other? The shadow wondered while looking at the boy and fox leaving for the 8th floor. Chapter 7, The Past and the Marbles. Arthur Leywin. Walking out of the guild building with a happy smile, I started walking home. My first dungeon dive went better than expected, ending on the 9th floor because Sylvie went into a magic stone food coma. Having recreated Thunderclap Impule and Absolute Zero, I decided it was time to create my own spells. But I'm scared for my wallet. Yes, wallet. Most of the spells will involve me using a sword in some way. Therefore, I need to buy a dummy sword to keep my current one from breaking due to a failed spell. Selling enough magic stones to earn 1.500 Valis. Adding the remaining Valis I got from Grandpa, I have 13.750 Valis in total. It should be enough to buy at least one sword. Not knowing where to find a cheap sword that won't break easily, I decided to ask Uncle Vince. Arriving at the apartment, I used my key and left Sylvie in my room before walking into the living room. Oh, Arthur, you returned. How was your first dive? Yeah, thanks to Grandpa's training, the first floors were not that difficult. I only got a few scratches, nothing that a potion won't fix. He observed me for a while before answering with a sad smile. It seems so. Actually, I wanted to ask you where I could buy armor and replacement swords for a good price. He started thinking about it before answering. If you go south from where we met yesterday, you will find a shop named the Married Blades. The owner is an old friend, so if you tell him I sent you and give him this, you should be able to get a sword without paying much. He threw what looked like a simple half-transparent marble. I didn't understand how a marble would help me, but I didn't ask questions. Before leaving, I took a quick wash and changed my clothes not to stand out by walking around with tattered clothes and monster blood. Vince. I was sitting on the couch, reminiscing about the past. After Zald's death last year, I became the sole surviving member of the Zeus familia. When our familia was disbanded, I retired, settled with the woman I loved, and married her the following year. Becoming a merchant wasn't planned, but it worked out, so I can't complain. Taking products from Orario and selling them in the villages outside was a relaxing job compared to the deadly dungeon. One day when I was in a small farming village a few hours from Orario, a boy came to me, and like any other kid, he wanted to hear stories about adventurers fighting monsters in the dungeon. Reminding me of my past self, I told him different stories of our past adventurers and some news of this day's adventurers. This continued every time I stopped at that village, but one day he came with his grandpa. Even if 15 years had passed and he looked like a simple farmer, we recognized each other instantly. To think, after 15 years, I would find the perverted Zeus settled down while taking care of 2 kids. We talked a few times after that, and when Arthur decided to become an adventurer, Zeus asked me to help him while he was in Orario. Not seeing a problem with it, I agreed. My thoughts were broken when I saw Arthur enter the living room. "Oh, Arthur, you returned. How was your first dive?" "Yeah, thanks to Grandpa's training, the first floors weren't that difficult. I only got a few scratches, nothing that a potion won't fix." I couldn't stop myself from showing a small smile. If the Zeus familia still existed, he would fit perfectly with us. Returning from his first dungeon dive with wounds and just shrugging it off. If I didn't get a good look at him, I would believe he only went to the first floors, but the slight remains of poisonous powder told me otherwise. "What kind of monster did you rise now, Zeus?" Arthur Leywin. Opening the door to the married blades, I stepped inside the store, and rows of weapons greeted me. Not seeing anyone near the counter, I decided to look around. Ignoring the other types of weapons, I looked at the swords. Great swords, claymores, long swords, rapiers, katanas, and many more that I didn't know the names of. But what worried me was that they didn't look cheap. At the current pace I earn money, it would take months, if not years, to afford one of those weapons. I asked for something cheap, not this Uncle Vince. "What are you doing here, brat? This isn't a place for kids, so go back to your mom." Looking in the direction where the voice came from, there I saw a man standing while looking at me with an annoyed look. He looked to be in his late 30s with short white hair swept backward, gray eyes, and tanned skin. He wore an apron covering his shoulders, chest and extended to his knees. Under that, he had a simple white shirt matched with black pants and shoes. "I'm here to buy a sword, sir. Uncle Vince told me you were his old friend. He gave me this." "Give me this." Snatching the marble from my hand, he turned around and started leaving. "Wait. What about my sword?" I asked, not understanding why he would snatch the marble from my hand and leave. "Just take the one you like, and don't bother me anymore, brat." I wanted to ask what his problem was, but hearing him cackling about marbles from the other side of the wall made me want to take the first best sword and leave. Making a mental note never to ask Uncle Vince for anything again. That man will hunt me in my nightmares tonight. Seriously, how did Uncle Vince even meet that guy? I was worried he would jump me for more marbles. What's the deal with them anyway? After testing multiple swords, I ended with a straight, single-edged Japanese sword. It had a black scabbard with a matching hilt and was perfect for stabbing or slashing. Chapter 8, Rivera. Arthur Leywin. 3 months have passed since my arrival in Orario. I created new spells ranging from defensive to offensive, with my favorite being Frost Armor, a spell that encased my body in layers of ice, providing me with a boost in defense and speed. Nerve Fracture. I got the idea to create this spell after overusing Thunderclap Impulse. The spell sends lighting magic into a target's nervous system to paralyze them. Mana Sword. With this spell, I can shape elemental mana and form a sword made from the element. Those spells were also the more advanced ones, with the others being just simple ones, like where I release elemental mana as a slash from my sword. Other things that happened during this time were Bet and Ace became level 4 adventurers, and Ina and Misha joined the guild. When we met at the guild, I wanted to introduce myself to the person that will be my sister's advisor in the future, and we talked for a bit. Unlike the attitude she will have in the future, she was excited to work at the guild, but that will change in the future. My reminiscing was cut short by a loud roar from the Minotaur I was fighting. The Minotaur was a cowhead humanoid monster. Despite having slow and simple movements, it is one of the strongest monsters in the middle floors. Killing it with my fire-infused sword, I picked up its magic stone and threw it to the pile of magic stones Sylvie was sitting on. You know, Sylv, even if I'm strong enough to fight them, you could do something instead of just sitting there. Q. But wouldn't I interrupt your training? She said while picking up another stone and started munching on it. Sylvie has also grown over this time. Her draconic form was around 8 meters long. Her scales were obsidian with black pitch-black bladed feathers, and the 2 horns that she had were now sharper and even more menacing than before. I returned to my fight. The goal for our trip today is to reach Rivera. The floor was a safety point where no monsters were born, though some monsters could come up from the floor below. Arriving at the 18th floor, what greeted us was a floor filled with crystals and nature. Large forests and lakes covered the floor. The exceptionally high ceiling is filled with brilliant shining crystals of 2 colors, white crystals in the center that resemble the sun and blue crystals surrounding it that resemble the sky. It's hard to believe something like this could be found in a dungeon that wants to kill you at every corner. Finding a lake, we decided to set up camp here. Our goal is to rest the night here and continue down to the 19th floor tomorrow. Leaving my backpack on the ground, I sat down in a meditative position and started working on a new spell. While having a mask and my hood up should be enough to prevent people from finding my identity, it won't be enough. That's why I decided to learn illusion magic. I only know that to use it, you need to combine wind and sound magic. The rest I need to figure out on my own. Starting by releasing some wind mana and sound mana toward my backpack. The 2 types of mana began to swirl together for a bit before dispersing. So just releasing mana won't work. What if I try to combine them inside my core before releasing them? Trying this theory, I focused on my mana core and started to fix the sound and wind mana together to see if something had happened. They started swirling together for a while before slowly fusing, but they dispersed before I could celebrate my achievement. This could mean 2 things. I'm doing this wrong, or I need to find the perfect amount of wind mana to sound mana. Q. Or, just stop hiding. No, Sylv, not yet. With that, I went back to learning illusion magic. Erg. I threw my hands up in frustration. For the past 3 hours, I couldn't combine the 2 types of mana. I got close but couldn't find the right amount. Then, before I could even think about it, my danger sense kicked in, and I avoided a punch from my back. Who are you? The person who just tried to punch me asked. She was a human around 18 years old with green eyes and red hair that was tied into a ponytail. Her hand ready to draw the rapier, which she kept at her waist. I was just resting here BEF. Before I could even explain myself, she attacked me. If you're gonna lie, try something believable. With a quick motion, I redirected the strike and started observing my surroundings. What greeted me was the sight of 10 other women with wet hair watching me, ready to attack if something happened to the woman I presumed was their leader. Looking at their appearance, I understood why this was happening. They didn't see me before and assumed I was trying to peek at them. I arrived here a few hours ago and didn't notice anyone. I will leave, so let's not fight. She looked at me for what seemed like an eternity before answering. Fine, I'll believe you this time, but if I see you try to peek, we will beat you up. While this wasn't my fault, and I should be able to fight them off, it would become a bigger commotion later, so with a nod, I took my stuff while sensing for a possible attack. Finding a new place, I started the process of creating illusion magic. But this time, it wasn't to disguise me but to hide. While I didn't recognize most people, there was one of them whom I did. She was an elf with sky blue eyes and golden blonde hair. Remembering the timeline of this world, I assumed this was the Astrea Familia, and this possibly being the expedition that ended with their death. Having broken through to Solid Yellow a while ago, I should be able to help them survive but especially kill Jura. After spending the whole night, I succeeded in creating it. While I surrounded myself in the illusion, I became practically invisible, and with the help of Mirage Walk hiding my mana signature, you won't find me. Chapter 9, Sensing them already fighting, I prepared myself by replenishing my core to have the best chance of winning the upcoming fight. When I came close enough to see them, the Rudra Familia had already failed their attempt to kill the Astrea Familia, but as they were about to attack again, the dungeon began to wail, creating the juggernaut to get rid of the adventurers there. With speed I could barely follow, it went straight for a brown-haired girl from the Astrea Familia, swinging its razor-sharp claw to split the poor girl in half, but before it could happen, the world froze for everyone but myself and the girl. Having activated Static Void, an ability the Acquire phase allows me to use, I ran toward the girl and brought her a safe distance away before releasing it. Seeing its prey gone, the juggernaut started looking around, clearly angry. Thankfully the next target it found wasn't me or the Astrea Familia but the idiots that started this. Having some time now, I looked around, seeing the Astrea Familia on guard from the juggernaut while the girl I saved finally registered everything that happened. You are the kid from yesterday," she said while looking at me, still scared from nearly dying. "Later," I said in a low voice while looking at the rest of her familia as they ran towards us, and before they could say anything, I continued loud enough for them to hear. "Listen here, this monster is powerful, and if we don't work together, we all will die." I continued, not knowing if they would trust a stranger or abandon me, but hey, saving one of their members should help. It has tremendous strength and speed with razor-sharp claws and armor that can reflect magic. However, it has poor defenses against physical attacks. I have a plan to defeat it, but I need your help. Not having the time to talk with each other due to the monster, they agreed, so I told them the plan. The plan was simple. I would attract the juggernaut so it would go after me while they would prepare for a surprise attack from different sides. Having decided everything, I started to run away from them, and when I was far enough, I looked at it. This could be my last battle. Taking a long breath, I prepared myself. Then, conjuring a simple fireball, I shot it at the monster. It snapped its head in my direction and looked at me. The moment its eyes looked at me, my body was filled with fear surpassing any other monster I had faced before. I started dodging its attacks by augmenting myself as much as possible and surrounding myself with wind mana. This continued for a while before the Astrea Familia found an opening and attacked it, cutting off one of its legs. The beast let out a pained roar while swiping its claws at the black Caereta Amazonas that cut off its leg, splitting her in two. Shit. Cursing out aloud, I started calculating the options I had left. Should I try to run away? I bit my lip in frustration. I couldn't run now. The only option was to use it. Taking a deep breath, I searched deep within my mana core for my beast will. Releasing it, I saw met with a suffocating amount of energy. My body was surrounded by an aura of different colors, and with that, I said the only thing I could. Phase 2, Dragon's Awakening. Golden runes ran down my arms and back with a burning sensation while my hair grew longer. Activating Thunderclap Impulse, black lightning started to coil around my body as I dodged the juggernaut's attack effortlessly. A white fire ignited around my hands, freezing the moisture around it as I absorbed the water mana into my body. The juggernaut was preparing to make another attack as its armor became rapidly encased in ice. Then, sending the black lightning that surrounded me straight at the monster, its armor cracked. Surrounding my sword with everything I could, it started to shine with different colors as fire, ice, earth, and wind swirled around it. My body was already in bad condition, but I augmented myself even further. With that, I charged at the beast, and with one thrust, I lodged my sword inside the beast. Letting the mana run rampant inside the beast's body, it shattered into many pieces, which turned into ash. As the second phase wore off, I coughed a mouthful of blood as my consciousness faded. The last thing I heard was the distant voices of the Astrea Familia. Chapter 10, Goddess Astrea. Arthur Leywin. Opening my eyes, what greeted me was the clear blue sky. The last thing I remember was killing the juggernaut, so why am I here? Looking at my surroundings, I could only see a vast wasteland stretching as far as my eyes could see. Did the Astrea Familia dump me here and leave? Throwing this idea away, I raised myself to my legs and started walking to see if I could find something or someone. I don't even know why I decided to help them. It was just when I thought about Ryu and what she would do something made me help them. SYLV, are you there? Getting no response, I got worried. Did something happen to her? Or did I die again, and this is my hell? Continuing to walk for what seemed like hours, I didn't find anything new. Then, as I was considering stopping, something caught my eye. Someone was sitting on a pile of rubble. When trying to get a good look at the person, the face was distorted, and the only thing I could see aside from their body was long wheat-colored hair. The person seemed to notice my presence and looked at me before saying 2 words before my consciousness faded. Not yet. I opened my eyes, and this time what greeted me was not the sky but a white ceiling and a lot of pain. Was that a dream? But who was that person? Could he be? Sitting up, I saw Sylvie sleeping near my legs. The room we were in was a simple one with a bed, a bedside table, and 2 bookshelves filled with books. The door opened as the same red-haired girl that attacked me in Rivera walked in with bandages in her hand. Seeing me awake, she let out a surprised yelp before recomposing herself. "You're awake!" She shouted loud enough for everyone to hear, and not long after, more people started crowding the small room. Feeling slightly uncomfortable from all the eyes on me, I decided to speak out. "Yes, although I still feel the pain from the battle, I'm all right, and thank you for not leaving me there after I passed out." "No, you don't need to thank us. More people would have died that day if it wasn't for your help," she said with a sad look while clenching her hands. "That's right, I forget the Amazons that the Juggernaut killed. 1 death over 10 is still better, but I couldn't feel bad. She wouldn't have died if I had just used my integrate phase from the start." A new voice that just entered the room brought me out of thinking about other possible scenarios. Looking at the person that entered, she had long walnut-brown hair gathered together behind her head and deep indigo eyes, wearing a simple kirtle and a long skirt. "Girls, let's not bother our guest just after he woke up," she said, addressing the members of the Astrea Familia before turning to me and speaking. "And thank you for saving my children. I don't know what would happen if you weren't there," she said with a slight bow. Deducing she was Astrea because of the children's comment, I said, "I did just what everybody would do, so you don't need to bow, goddess," stopping before saying her name. It wasn't like people knew how all the gods looked, so it could be suspicious if I knew her. Hearing me stop before saying her name, she introduced herself. "I'm Astrea, the head of this familia. As I said, I did just what everybody would do, so you don't need to bow, goddess Astrea." Nodding, she observed me for a while before speaking again. "I would want to talk to you about the incident, but you should rest for now." With that, she left me alone with Sylvie, and not long after, sleep overtook me. Having woken the next day, I went to Astrea's office, where I was sitting, sipping on my tea with Astrea on the opposite side of the table separating us. The silence was broken by Astrea. I reported the incident directly to Arenas. She stopped for a second before continuing. "The monster that attacked you was a special monster the dungeon sends as a protection mechanism when the dungeon is damaged too much, so he ordered us to keep this incident secret." Knowing this already, it didn't surprise me, but there was something that worried me. "Did you tell him about me?" I asked, hoping she didn't. "We didn't know your name then, but I told him about your appearance." "Great, so now the strongest god in Horario knows how I look and what I'm capable of. Now I'm probably gonna be stalked by a living skeleton everywhere I go. What's next, the Juggernaut returning as a Xenos wanting to fight me again?" "I see," I told her. Me being bandaged made it obvious they knew I didn't have a blessing, and Arenas wouldn't have a problem finding who I was. Well, I was already strong enough to take care of myself if a god sent his familiar after me. But that didn't mean I would just show everyone it just yet. Let's hope they keep it to themselves. We continued our talk for some time before I made a request. As you know, I'm not in a familia right now. So while I can go down to the middle floors with small difficulty, the lower floors would pose a problem, and let's not talk about the deep floors. Looking at her reaction to see what she thought, I was met with a peaceful expression, so I continued. "That's why I request you to let me join your children on their expeditions." Thinking about it, she answered me. "While I'm not against it, it's something my children need to decide." "Thank you, Gods Astrea." After that, our conversation ended, and I stayed for dinner, where I got to know them better. They agreed to let me join them on the next expedition. Usually, people wouldn't trust a stranger, but I assumed saving their lives helped. They also asked me about my abilities. Considering that we would be working together, I decided to tell them I knew some elemental spells. They already saw me use them, so why not? And it wasn't a lie, so Lady Astrea didn't find anything wrong about it. After dinner, I left thinking about everything that had happened. Unfortunately, using the integrate phase isn't something I can use freely yet. I need to be stronger so I won't need to use it if a strong enemy appears. Chapter 11, Arenas and Arthur Leywin. 2 weeks had passed since the Juggernaut accident, and I was contacted by Lady Astrea. She told me Arenas wanted to talk with me. She didn't tell me what he wanted, but I could assume it was something about my powers. What else would he need me for? The Astrea Familia already knew I didn't have a blessing, and it wasn't so hard for Arenas to find out just by checking my records. Following Athena, we entered the guild. Unlike the other times I visited it to talk with Sophie or exchange my magic stones, there was only one person inside aside from the two of us. Hello, gods Astrea and young Arthur. I'm an assistant of Arenas, tasked with escorting you to the room of prayers, said the figure. I would attack the person if I didn't know who it was beforehand. Black robes covered their face, making it impossible to tell their gender or any other features. This was Fells, also known as a cheap Ains knockoff due to being a skeleton. Follow me, Fells said. Fells guided us until we arrived at the entrance of the room of prayers but stayed while we went in. When we walked in, I could feel Arena's gaze observing me with from what looked like a stone throne. Astrea, Arthur, thank you for coming, Arenas said. There is no need to thank me, Lord Arenas, I said with a slight bow while Astrea only nodded her head. It was better not to anger someone like him. The conversation started with me recounting my side of the story while not mentioning why I was so deep in the dungeon. He listened without interrupting me. That's quite an achievement, not only going so deep down the dungeon alone but also defeating a juggernaut with minimal assistance, not to mention what you've been doing since your arrival. That's why I request your assistance in a certain matter, he said. My assistance? Why would he want something from me? My mind thought of possible scenarios. Could it be he knew about Sylvie and wanted my help with the Xenos? No, if he did want my help with the Xenos, Lady Astrea wouldn't be here. You need my assistance for what exactly? I asked. Wiping out Evelys, he answered. Well, that wasn't on my list. Walking out of the guild, I thought about what Arenas told me. It was weird to believe Astrea was okay with being part of this. From what I observed, she is someone who would be lenient to the point of being willing to forgive serious criminals under the premise that they swear not to commit any wrongdoing again. But I guess she understands how harsh circumstances can sometimes be and agrees with the idea of abandoning such principles if the situation demands it. That brings us to the plan for the attack. It was simple, the Astrea Familia and I would attack their bases while the Hermes Familia would take care of the people that escaped. And the Ganesha Familia would patrol the city and divert civilians from our location to prevent innocents from getting hurt in the crossfire. The Hermes Familia had already tracked the location of all their bases with a list of confirmed members spread around Orario. Hence, the only problem was to make it quick and not alert the others, so flashy spells were out of the picture. But why would Arenas want me to join? I was involved in the incident, but why involve me in this? From what he said, he already knows what I can do, so why? If he knows about Sylvie, it could involve the Xenos, but I can't be sure yet. We continued towards Stardust Garden, where we would go through it once again before everything started. Standing on the roof of an abandoned building with Rio. Before we even started, I made a sound barrier inside the building so no sound would escape, and with a nod from Rio, we jumped down. Dampening my fall with wind mana, I landed and drew my sword. Sadly, the sword Grandpa gave me was destroyed during my last fight. So I used the sword I bought at the Married Blades. Setting my blade ablaze with a blue fire and activating Thunderclap Impule, we went into action, killing multiple Evelys members. Even if it was the first time I killed a human, it didn't affect me, honestly, I didn't feel any different. This was Evelys, a group that shouldn't get any mercy from me, so I ignored the screams of pain and begging to be spared and continued killing. Me augmenting myself and using Thunderclap Impulse and Rio, being a level 4, they didn't stand a chance, and not so long after, they were all dead. Having finished our part, we left the building and started running towards the Rudra Familia, our final goal where we would regroup with the other members before attacking. Taking a look at Rio, who has been quiet for some time now. She took Iska's death the hardest, but still, her condition was better than it would have been if they had all died. How are you feeling? I decided to ask. I'm fine. Let's finish this. she said without even looking at me. Over the past week since the accident, we got to know each other and became what I would consider friends. So I knew that Arenas didn't decide to get rid of Evelis now, she would. When we arrived at our meeting point, Elise and Gajuno were already there and waiting for the rest. Seeing you without any injuries, I assume everything went well? She asked after noticing our arrival. Yeah, they didn't pose a challenge. I answered while Ryu said nothing while looking at the Rudra Familia with clenched fists. Seeing this, I looked at Elise, and she understood what to do. While I could talk to her, we have known each other for 2 weeks, so talking with the captain of her Familia was the better choice. After 10 minutes of waiting, everyone arrived, so we went through the plan again. It was similar to how we attacked the other Evelis hideouts but this time on a bigger scale. We would split up again, and after the signal, we start attacking them from different sides to make them an easier target. While I thought about killing Rudra during this, but this being an operation Arenas knew I was participating in would have me exiled from Orario or worse, killed. But that didn't stop me from making sure that Jura was dead. Jumping through a window, I used sound magic to remove the noise of shattering glass and started walking through their Familia home, killing every member I saw searching for him. Thankfully I didn't need to search for him because he came to me. Standing there with 5 other members, I couldn't stop a smile from appearing. My prey came to me instead. Letting out my killing intent, it wasn't that powerful alone but combined with the pressure of a yellow core, it did the job of scaring them. I killed the cannon fodder with ice spikes through their heads while looking Jura directly in the eyes. All my intent focused straight on him. Surrender, and I won't hurt you. He shouted while trying to stay composed but failing. I would be scared if your legs didn't shake that much, I said while slowly walking towards him. Seeing me not stop, he tried slashing me with his short sword, but I avoided it and grabbed his hand. You know you would at least get a quick and painless death from the Juggernaut, I said while my hand ignited in white flames that slowly began to spread, freezing his arm. Tightening my grip on his arm, it shattered. He tried to scream, but I used sound magic, so nothing came out. I watched him as he tried to flee from me, but that won't happen. Activating nerve fracture, I paralyzed him. Crouching down, I looked him head in the eyes. You should be happy that I'll kill you now instead. If I didn't kill you here, you would one day do something that would make this look like child's play. After saying that, I sent a large amount of sound magic, creating an ear-piercing sound that raptured his eardrums. I watched him as he suffered from the pain, before letting out a sigh. I don't know why I took it to this level. I could have killed him straight away. So why did I do this to him? I'm happy Sylvie wasn't here to see me. His head fell on the floor with a single swing of my sword. The Rudra Familia was dead. Sylvie and I stayed home the following day just thinking about the last days. We successfully managed to wipe out Evelis. While I knew there surely were survivors somewhere spread across Orario, there wasn't anything we could do without knowing who they were. I feel like I'm missing something important. It has been almost 9 years since my reincarnation, so it's hard to remember what will happen in the future besides a few events. I could have written them down, but I didn't want to risk Grandpa finding out. If he did, I would be forced to tell him about my reincarnation, which I didn't want to do. But back to yesterday's event. Thanks to Arenas and the guild covering everything up, the public thinks that the Rudra Familia died in the dungeon, and Rudra went up to heaven due to the loss of his children. While we and the gods/goddesses from Bigger knew what really happened and the fact that Rudra returning to heaven was him being banished by Arenas. As for the bodies, let's leave it at the Hermes Familia were good at their job. Chapter 12, Return Home. Arthur Leywin. As I waited for Ryu to exit the guild, I started thinking about what had happened since the Juggernaut incident 2 months ago. Arenas didn't summon me again, but my core progressed to solid yellow. The Astrea Familia also helped me by selling more magic stones. When Sylvie stopped eating all the stones from the middle floors, I had more to sell, and they did it for me. While Arenas and Fells knew about my strength, the rest of the guild didn't. I began thinking about joining a Familia. However, while my magic is at a level that only a few could compete in this world, the problem is my body. Even with my assimilated body as I go down the dungeon, it's hard to fight without always relying on augmenting with mana. The blessing could help me improve my body to save mana during combat and allow me to use techniques like Burst Step. Burst step is a technique that combines mirage walk with a burst of speed created by artificially activating the muscles needed to take a quick step. This technique results in an almost instant, short-range movement that is mostly undetectable. But the problem is that human bodies cannot handle the burden this technique places on the body, resulting in permanent damage to the legs, and overuse will cause me to become crippled. However, with the help of the fauna, I should be able to use it at some point without this happening. Art, let's go. The voice of Rhea snapped me out, and as I looked up, I saw her walking out of the guild. Sylvie, seeing this, jumped out of my head, and jumped to her. I couldn't help but sigh at Sylvie's behavior. Last week when I was invited for dinner by the Astrea Familia, she decided it would be a great idea to steal Lady Astrea's food. Thankfully Lady Astrea thought her behavior was cute and gave her more food. Ryu especially warmed up to Sylvie and always gave her extra food, so she became Sylvie's favorite. It also confirmed that after you see Sylvie, the effects of her mysterious hiding power fade. Yes, coming. I answered as we started walking to the Stardust Garden. Some would wonder why we are currently together. The answer is simple: she wanted to see me fight against normal monsters. But, knowing her personality because of my past life, I knew I could trust her, so I didn't see a problem with it. Q. Maybe you shouldn't trust people because of your past knowledge, Papa. Sylvie said, and I started thinking about it. She was right that I can't completely trust what I know. A good example could be my interactions with Seer when I visit the hostess of fertility. When we arrived, we were greeted by Lady Astrea, and we gathered at the table where we would discuss any future expedition I would participate in. But before I do that, I need to learn how to fight with the other members. While I could fight well alone, fighting with others is different. That will also be useful in the future when Bella becomes an adventurer, and we will go to the dungeon together. Speaking of Bella, her birthday will be in 2 days, so I'm going to return to the village. What should I buy for her? A weapon. But what kind would fit her best? Originally Belle would use a dagger, but Bella doesn't want to use one. Me being in this world changed a few things, like the fact that Bella wanted to learn how to use a sword because she saw me using it. A short sword is small, lightweight, and easy to wield. Short swords are also good when fighting in confined spaces, being more easily wielded for thrusting and swinging. It should be a good start, and she can change her weapon later. It's decided. I'm going to buy her a short sword tomorrow. I was again standing in front of the married blades. Even if the owner is crazy, but the swords he sells are good quality. Taking a deep breath, I went inside. Hello, customer. How can I help you? The same crazy guy welcomed me. But wait, why isn't he crazy anymore? Is that the same guy? Looking closely, he seems the same, excluding the craziness. Maybe a twin brother. Ah, I'm here to buy a sword. I decided to say, ignoring my thoughts. He just nodded, so I went to look at the different short swords. After some time looking, a sword caught my eye. The grip is wrapped in black leather and silver wire with a matching sheath. Picking it up, I did some test swings. The sword was tough, sturdy, and sharper than other low-class weapons, though it was also heavier than other short swords. Taking the sword, I placed it on the counter where the owner was. I will buy this one, I said, still looking at him, wondering if he really didn't have a crazy twin. The last time I was scared, he would jump me to get another marble, but this time he looked normal. He looked at the weapon before smiling. You seem to have a good eye. It will cost you 20,000 valis. He said. Considering the quality of this weapon, it's relatively cheap. So why would he sell this at such a low price? Deciding to ignore this for now, I paid for the weapon and left. 2 days have passed, and I'm currently running with wind mana, surrounding me to increase my speed with mana rotation, refiling my core. Now with my core level, I can easily run between the village and Orario in just a few hours without stopping. After just another 20 minutes, I could see the village, so I started slowing down and walking normally. Observing the village, I could see the adults working in the fields while the kids played around with each other. Walking at a normal pace, it didn't take long before I arrived near the house, where I saw Bella training with a wooden sword. Seeing my arrival, she dropped the sword in her hand as she dashed toward me. "Big brother," she said, still energetic, while giving me a hug. I promised to visit often, but almost half a year had passed since I left for Arario, and this was my first visit. Sighing, I patted her head as we went inside the house where Grandpa was preparing food. After some time, we sat at the table, and Bella wanted to hear everything about my adventures in the dungeon, so I started telling them about everything that had happened. When it came to the Juggernaut and Evelus, I didn't directly specify what the monster was, only that it was powerful, and I completely skipped the part about Evelus. It was so Bella wouldn't find out about it, but Grandpa probably figured it out based on what I said. "Wow, Big Brother is so strong," Bella said as she listened to all the stories I told. "Not only strong, but he also started making his harem," Grandpa said as he nodded sagely. "Did he seriously take this out of the whole thing? I seriously hope this is his act." "Don't listen to him, Bella. When you become an adventurer, be smart and don't do anything I would," I said so she doesn't start trying to do stupid things in the dungeon, or worse, pick up boys in the dungeon. I wouldn't let that happen, and if some boy disappeared in the dungeon, it would be just the dungeon doing its job, nothing else. "Yes, Big Brother," she said. We continued talking about other things like the upcoming expedition I'm joining and Bella's training. This should be an excellent time to give her my present. "You have been training hard, so I decided to get you this," I said, giving her the short sword I bought. She quickly took the short sword from my hands and looked at it. "Thank you, Big Brother," she said with stars shining from her eyes as she was about to run out and start training again, but I stopped her before she could. "You can train tomorrow. The sword won't leave," I said as she stopped and started rubbing the back of her head. We spent the rest of the day with me, telling them other stories and showing more of my magic. My magic has improved a lot since I left. Now instead of just augmenting my body or sword with the element, I could use some spells I developed. The best part was that they could still affect gods in their sealed state. Seeing Zeus, the god of lightning, be affected by a lightning spell was the funniest thing I've seen. Though he seemed depressed afterward. Sidestepping Bella's attack, I tripped her, and she fell face first on the ground. "Ow wow. Can you stop doing that?" she asked, annoyed for tasting the ground for the 5th time today. "You should be ready for everything in the dungeon, not only the monster but the adventurers. They can sometimes be worse," I said. Well, considering I did the opposite by saving the Astrea Familia without thinking, I don't know if I should be saying this. But hey, if they did something, Sylvie would help me. Standing up, she was ready to start again, so we continued the training until she couldn't continue anymore. While I had my mana core and assimilated body, so I had more strength than normal people, she was still an ordinary mortal without a blessing. This also led me to think more about the changes in this world. Could she still be the reincarnation of the Argonaut, and will she still get the Liaris freeze skill? Our training continued for the rest of the week before I decided to return to Arario. It would give Sylvie access to better quality magic stones and help me progress my core faster. While I had used the ambient mana to help me purify my core in the past, using a magic stone that contracted lots of mana would speed up the process of me becoming a white core mage. Especially now that the progress started slowing down. Chapter 13, New God Descends. Arthur Leywin. 3 years have passed since I became an adventurer, and I've grown a lot during this time. My core broke through into the initial silver stage, and I could see the ether particles but didn't have any luck in influencing them yet. I also joined the Astrea Familia on multiple expeditions, and we managed to reach the 46th floor. Considering we are a small group, this is a big feat. Ryu and I also formed a team outside the expeditions. Sylvie and I also moved out of Uncle Vince's apartment and bought our own. It's nothing big but enough for us. Stop spacing out, princess. A voice snapped me out of my reminiscing. My eyes twitched when I heard the nickname. I told you not to call me that, Lyr. But you look like a pretty princess with your magic. Lyra said with a smirk while I could hear the muffled laughter from the others. Nothing will happen if I punch her, right? No, I shouldn't do that. I got the nickname due to my illusion magic. I thought it was a good idea to disguise myself and make me look more feminine so people wouldn't stick out when people saw me joining them in the dungeon, but it was the worst thing I could have done. I stopped using it after the first time, but they still call me that, and I blame ROB for this stupid idea. Yes, I will blame ROB for every stupid decision I make. Sigh. Wait, Why were we even here? I suddenly remembered that I didn't know why I was there. I only knew that Lady Astrea asked Rio to bring me here. Lady Astrea, could you tell me why we are here and why so many people are gathered? I asked the goddess. Oh, didn't I tell you? A new goddess will descend today and make a welcome speech. She explained with a smile. Wait, a goddess will descend today. It must be some minor goddess because I don't remember a big shot in the canon story that descended at this time. So I waited, and after a few minutes, I could see a white beam descend from the sky, and magical screens started appearing throughout Orario. On the screen, multiple gods could be seen surrounding the middle where the beam hit. When the light started fading, I could see a petite goddess with a youthful appearance. She had blue eyes and mid-thigh length black hair tied into twin tails that reached down to her mid-thighs. She was wearing a white mini dress with a blue ribbon around her neck and one tied under her breasts and around her arms, and a pair of white gloves. Greetings, citizens of Oreo. I'm Hestia, goddess of the hearth, home, and hospitality. She began her speech, but I tuned it out as I started to think about what was happening. What is she doing here? She was supposed to descend a year from now, so what did change? Rob. That bastard must have done this. Does that mean the canon plot will also happen sooner? Shit. If it happens, all my early preparation to be strong enough will go to waste. Q. Papa, calm down. Sylvie cued, and it helped me calm down. Let's think about it. Hestia descended today instead of a year from now. What could be the cause? I started thinking about every possible scenario, from the changes to the timeline to the original timeline, to find what caused Hestia to descend early. Wait. I finally put this together, but if this theory is correct, this could be bad. In the original timeline, Hestia descends around 6 months before Belle arrives in Orario, and Bella will come to Orario in 6 months. Is this ROB's doing or fate? I hope this doesn't change the major events. Art, why are you still standing there? Rio's voice snapped me out. What do you mean, Rio? After saying that, I looked around and saw Hestia had finished her speech, and everybody was returning to doing their duties. Oh. I said while rubbing the back of my head, trying not to worry about it as I started walking home. But this brings out the question of what Familia Bella should join. At first, I thought about her joining the Astrea Familia, but now that Hestia is here, it has changed things. Waking up early the next day, I started preparing for the day. My new outfit consisted of a loose black long-sleeve shirt with a cloak lined with soft white fur around its hood. A pair of black pants, soft leather shoes, and my sword strapped to my waist. Taking my backpack, I checked if I had everything we would need. Some healing potions, food, and a large water pouch. Everything seemed good, so I left the apartment and walked toward the dungeon with Sylvie resting inside my hood. Without any problems, we arrived at the entrance to the dungeon, where Rio was waiting for us. Morning, Rio. I hope you didn't wait long. I greeted the blonde elf. Morning, Art. No, I just arrived. She replied with a small smile. We talked for a bit before descending the staircase into the dungeon. We started killing every monster on our way down the floors, and I must say it's nice to have someone watching your back. Of course, I always had Sylvie, but she is lazy, so if nothing serious happens, she won't do anything. Sigh. My daughter is lazy in the dungeon. Dodging the attack from a deadly hornet, I set my sword on fire and stabbed it straight through the head of the monster. The deadly hornet is a large bee monster with a stinger powerful enough to pierce heavy armor and kill a level 2 adventurer in one thrust. As I picked the magic stone from its corpse, I saw Ryu killing the last monster, so we continued down to the 25th floor. The 25th floor marks the beginning of the Great Fall, a massive waterfall around 400 meters wide and twice that in length, which lasts until the 27th floor. To move on to the next floor, we must navigate through a series of passageways varying in elevation around the waterfall to reach the passageway at the bottom. As we entered, Ryu took out her Undine cloth, a blue cloth imbued with the power of an Undine, giving increased protection against water-based attacks and helping the wielder underwater. I didn't use one because I could easily use my magic, so it was an unnecessary expense. We continued to navigate through the passages, killing every monster with minor difficulty before leaving the water city behind and entering the 28th floor, which was a safety point. Let's rest here for a few hours before we continue, Ryu said while taking out something from her backpack. Sylvie left to roam around the floor. I wasn't worried because this was a safe floor, and if a single monster came down here, she could easily kill it. But now that we are here, I thought about something important and needed Ryu's opinion. Say Ryu, what do you think about bringing an almiraj as a pet for my sister? I asked her. She looked at me before answering with a deadpan expression. Almiraj, as in the level 2 rabbit monster. Yes, that would be a great present for your sister. Yes, they would look cute together, I said while nodding my head. You know, with all the stupid things you do, I wouldn't be surprised if you actually did it, she said before drinking from her water pouch. We continued talking for some time while eating before I felt Sylvie's emotion from our link. SYLV, I yelled while running in the direction she was in. Ryu, seeing me, panicked and running, quickly followed on guard for an attack. When I arrived, I saw Sylvie stuck to a crystal that was absorbing her mana at a very fast pace. My whole body warned me not to come near, but I ignored it and tried to help Sylvie. Trying to separate her didn't work, and she was getting weaker every second. I could also feel it start to drain my mana. Not having the time, I decided to activate Static Void. As the colors of my surroundings inverted and time stopped, I started thinking of possible solutions. Looking around, I didn't see any monster that could do this, and I couldn't remember any crystal that could do something like this. Activating Realm Heart, I could see all the mana and ether surrounding me. Shit! I cursed out loud. How is this possible? This crystal isn't only absorbing the mana but also the surrounding ether. What should I do? Not seeing a way out, I decided to do something stupid again. Releasing Static Void, I placed my hand on the crystal and started channeling mana into it. Pushing in more mana, the crystal started to focus on absorbing my mana instead of Sylvie's, allowing her to detach from the crystal for the next thing I would do. She was barely conscious and couldn't move, so I used wind magic to move her to Ryu, that just arrived. Ryu, don't come close. This crystal is absorbing the surrounding mind, I yelled at her. I took a deep breath ignoring what she was yelling, and concentrated all the mana from my core into the crystal. This could end in a good way or in a bad way. The good being it releases me after my mana empties, or the bad one, it would explode. Well, healing potions should heal the damage. No going back now. Pushing all the mana from my core, I saw as the crystal absorbed it, and not so long after, instead of letting me go, it started shining brightly, gradually becoming brighter while burning my hand. Arthur. Q. Papa. I could see as Ryu ignored my previous warning and tried to reach me, but she wasn't fast enough. The light covered me entirely, and instead of any pain, I felt a floating sensation before I was slammed onto the ground with a thud. Erg. My core was practically empty but slowly replenishing. My body felt heavy, and I could barely stay awake. P***pa, with $E4RY*. I heard Sylvie's voice through our link. I focused on the link, but it was weak, I could barely feel it. So this should mean we are far away from each other. Sylvie, listen to me. I'm alive, but I don't know where I am. Help Ryu get out of the dungeon and stay with her until I find a way out. I sent my thoughts, hoping she heard it. Feeling my consciousness slowly fade, I used the small amount of mana left in my core to create an earth dome around me, leaving only enough space to get fresh air. With that, I welcomed the darkness. Chapter 14, Alone. Arthur Leywin. With a groan, I woke up only to hit my head. Ugh. Where am I? Holding my hand, I started trying to recall the last moments before I passed out. Right, that crystal separated me from Sylvie and Ryu. Now, where did it take me? Checking my mana core, it was fully replenished, so I opened the dome to see what was outside. The surroundings were dim, but the magic crystal around the walls provided enough light so I could see my surroundings without any problems. Trying to sense for any nearby mana signatures, I didn't sense anything, so I assumed there weren't any monsters or adventures around. Well, that's good at least, I said aloud. Sylvie, can you hear me? While waiting for a response, I didn't get anything. I could still feel the connection, but it was weak, so I assumed we were too far away. Sylvie is strong enough to protect herself and Ryu now, so I don't need to worry. Let's just hope I'm only deeper in the dungeon. Did I raise a flag? Let's hope I didn't, I thought as I reinforced my ears. The sound of rushing water filled the area, and it wasn't that far away. I checked my backpack and noticed that the potions were broken, and only the food and water pouch were intact. Throwing away the potions, I left the area and started heading toward the water. Getting water and food will be the best plan for now. Then I need to find the way to the floor above. It didn't take long before I arrived near a 5 meters wide river. The first thing I did was try the water and see if it was drinkable. Taking a sip from the water, and thankfully, it was drinkable. So I started to drink more of the water and then took out my water pouch and refilled it. But something caught my eye. It was a small purple stone in the palm of my hand. An achlorite. No, this could be another extremely similar stone. Focusing on the stone, I could feel the stone absorb some of my mana, but not on the same level as the crystal did. This isn't the time to think about it. Sitting down, I started sensing my surroundings for the possible monsters while thinking of a plan to get back to the surface. Going up is the only choice, but the problem is my food supply. I had enough food to last a few days if I rationed it. If I'm lucky, I should find something edible in the dungeon, like the dungeon crops found between floors 29 to 36. I spent some time exploring the floor, and I could assume it was a safe floor due to the lack of monsters. I also found the entrance to the lower floor, but that wasn't what I was looking for. There wasn't anything that looked edible on this floor. So now, my only choice was to find a way to go up and try my luck. It didn't take long before I found a passage leading to the floor above, so I went up. As I entered what I dubbed Floor 1, I started looking around. The floor looked like the previous one. Not sensing anything near me, I continued forward, but when I was around 400 m from the stairs, I felt killing intent from all around me. Shit. I cursed. Looking around, I saw hundreds of white wolves blocking me from returning to the passage to Floor 0. I can't feel any mana from them. Since when can monsters hide their mana signature? Seeing no choice but to fight, I augmented my body and activated Thunderclap Impulse waiting for them to attack me. Staring at the wolf I assumed was the leader because he was bigger and had 2 horns unlike the others, I thought of the best way to handle this. With a loud howl from the leader, the other wolves started their attack. Igniting my sword with blue flames and using wind magic to increase my speed even further, I started with a slash to the closest wolf and severed its head. What surprised me was that it started disappearing, but I didn't have time to think about it because I sensed an attack from behind. So I spun around, the flames from my sword expanding the length of the blade and killing 2 other wolves before they disappeared. I continued killing every wolf near me, losing track of how many I had killed, but the more I killed, the more I appeared. Looking at where the leader was previously, I saw him still there while being guarded by 2 other wolves. Wanting to try something, I activated Realm Heart. The mana particles became visible, and my ability to sense mana increased. Then I saw the wolves all were connected by mana to the leader. Is this his ability? Deactivating Realm Heart, I stopped killing the wolves and concentrated on creating a spell that would kill all the wolves around me. Using wind magic, I created 4 tornadoes around me, and by infusing them with fire magic, I created fire tornadoes. Then, before the wolves could even do anything, I expanded the tornadoes and sent them straight at the wolves. The wolves howled in pain as they started to burn before disappearing like the others. Looking at the leader, I saw that he started to back away, trying to retreat, as I saw more wolves magically appear around him. But before he could, I dashed toward him, jumping over the new wolves and landing just before him. Before he could even react, I plunged my sword into his head, and as he was dying, I saw all the other wolves start to flicker out of existence. Well, a Naruto wolf. I didn't expect that here. I said to myself. After the wolf died, I felt the mana coming from its magic stone, even without the help of Realm Heart. So monsters can hide their mana signature now. Interesting. If other monsters possess this ability, it would be bad for me now that I'm alone. After I picked the magic stone from the wolf's dead corpse, I could sense the immense amount of mana stored in it. I stored the stone in my backpack and continued to explore the floor. Real lion. I watched as the blinding light spread from the crystal, engulfing Arthur, and when the light faded, I couldn't see Arthur anymore. Arthur. I yelled as I tried to find him. No matter where I looked, I couldn't find him. I spent hours searching the floor and calling for him, but he wasn't there. I was feeling hopeless and couldn't accept that Arthur had died. When Sylvie started crying, I tried to comfort the white fox while trying not to cry myself. We just sat there for some time before she jumped out of my arms and tried pulling me toward the 27th floor. "Sylvie, we can't, we need to find Arthur," I said, trying to stop the little fox from leaving. That's when she decided to stop and bite me on my arm. I felt a sting of pain before, and a tattoo appeared. I didn't even have a chance to think about it before I heard a voice out of nowhere. "Q. Papa is fine," he said to help Mama out. "Who?" I looked around but couldn't find anyone around me besides Sylvie. "Sylvie?" I asked. "Q. Yes, Mama," she said between sniffs. Sylvie could talk. Wait, could Arthur also hear her? That isn't important now. "Sylvie, do you know where Arthur is?" I asked, hoping she would know. Q. Papa doesn't know where he is, but he is alive. He said I should help you get out. We need to help him. Q. Papa is strong. He will come back. I thought about it for some time. Sylvie confirmed that he was alive, but I don't know where he is. Has been transported to a lower floor. I won't be able to survive it alone. So we must return and get help from the rest. But how will I get out of here alone? Q. I'm strong, Mama. I'll help. This actually made me laugh despite the situation. I know you want to help Sylvie, but you are too small to help, I said while petting her head. Then, as if to prove me wrong, she started glowing and expanding until the cute white fox was gone, and an 8 meters long black dragon appeared. "Sissy Sylvie, is that you?" I asked the dragon. Q. Of course, it's me, Mama. The dragon said with a proud face. Okay, so the cute light fox I have known for over 2 years was a dragon. Just thinking about this made me forget what had happened for a while, and I just stared at the dragon. Wait. She called me Mama the whole time. If she called me Mama, then the person she calls Papa must be. Stop, Rio. This isn't the time to think about it. We need to get out of here and get help and find Arthur. We managed to leave the dungeon safely. Thankfully, we didn't encounter any adventures until we returned to the 18th floor, and from that point, I could manage to return without her help. Running through the street of Orario, I ignored the surprised looks of everyone and made my way to the Stardust Garden. Sylvie. While Mama and the rest of her familia members discussed the plan to help Papa, I tried to contact him through our bond. While I needed to make a temporary bond connection with Mama so I could tell her to come back, my connection with Papa is still intact, but I can't connect with him. The only thing I know is that he is still alive but far away. I can't help but blame myself for everything that happened. If I didn't go near that crystal, this wouldn't happen. I wanted to go and find him, but Papa told me to stay and protect Mama, so I must do that. Chapter 15, Reunion. Arthur Leywin. The ground was littered with corpses from all the monsters I had killed. I don't know how long I've been stuck here, but if I had to guess, I would say around a month. Of course, the constant fighting and not having the chance to sleep safely didn't help. Thankfully, I found a floor with fruits I could eat so I wouldn't die of starvation. I also found out I could create a safe place inside the walls as long as I didn't damage the dungeon too much. The problem was that the dungeon regenerated itself, so I couldn't sleep much, but a few hours were better than none. Collecting all the magic stones, I began to head to the next floor. Thankfully, the monsters start to be weaker the higher I go, so as long as I don't do anything stupid, I can defeat them with my magic and mana rotation. I don't know if even a first-class adventurer could do what I'm doing here, but I'm the better mage. That didn't sound as good as, I'm the better swordsman, but hey, it was the truth. Who else can control 4 elements and their deviant forms in this world? No one. I think. Looking at my hand, I saw the purple stone again. I seriously hope I get Regis. Otherwise, I'm going to be mad. This stupid rock absorbed most of the mana from the magic stones, leaving me with just the scraps. Well, it isn't like it was a small amount. It was almost enough to break me to mid-silver, but it also proves how gluttonous the stone is. I guess being teleported here wasn't the worst thing that could happen. At least my core didn't break, and I can get stronger here, maybe even break into white core. This place also made me realize that my magic sense isn't the best. While I can sense people and monsters without a problem normally, but if they hide their magic presence, I can't do it without the help of realm art. So what better way to improve this than fighting the monster while blindfolded? Apparently, getting yourself almost killed helps to improve faster. Well, they say no pain, no gain. Am I slowly becoming a masochist? No, 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 like I told Sylvie all the other times, this is just training. Right, Mr. Rock. I said while looking at the purple rock, but I didn't get any response. Well, what did I expect from a leeching rock? I need to get out of here before I start talking to my water pouch. I entered the next floor and managed to sense hundreds of monsters, and I couldn't stop myself from smiling. Even if this meant lots of fighting and the possibility of death, I still needed to find the next floor, and the mana-rich magic stones were just a bonus. Yeah, that's it. I told myself while nodding my head. I'm not some battle maniac that wants to fight strong opponents. Maybe I should fight Otter when I Leah. No, stop it, Arthur. You said you are not a battle maniac, so stop. But I would like to test my strength against a high-leveled adventurer. But how would I manage to do that? Just go to Folkvanger and say, Yo Otter, I came here to fight you. Actually, that may work if I attack the whole familia. Anyway, that's for later. Now I have a horde of monsters to kill and magic stones to absorb. I augmented my body and activated Thunderclap Impulse, and with that, I charged at the place I could sense the monsters. Arriving at the monster horde's location, I went straight for the kill and killed a giant orc that could rival a veteran level 5 adventurer just by its presence alone. Noticing a group lunging at me, I made an illusion clone and jumped away to kill another one. The illusion clone was a new spell I developed during my stay here. I create a clone of myself as a distraction while I'm invisible and can hide or sneak attack from a different position. This continued for hours, but thanks to mana rotation absorbing the surrounding mana, my core was half full after the fight. I seriously wished for something like a dimensional ring because the amount of magic stones couldn't fit in my backpack, and I was forced to stay and absorb them after every big fight. Using earth magic, I made a quick safe place where I stored all the magic stones, and after closing it, I started to absorb the mana. After about 200 stones, my core broke into mid-silver, and I was happy about it, but about 90% of the mana went to the crystal, and I wondered if it could become Regis. If I remember correctly, Regis was formed by combining the mana from Arthur, Sylvia, Sylvie, and Yuto. While the crystal absorbed my mana and Sylvie's, I can't feed it the mana from Sylvia or Yuto. If this crystal is similar to the Aclarite Ren gave Arthur, but it could be an ordinary crystal that seared itself onto my palm. Well, just wasting the magic stones aside, this crystal doesn't harm me, so I can keep it and see what happens. With that, I picked another magic stone from the big pile and started absorbing it. Picking up the last stone, I started absorbing it while eating a weird-looking fruit that tasted like tomatoes. It wouldn't take long before I could go fight again. I mean, finding my way out of the dungeon. Fine, I'm maybe a battle maniac. But who wouldn't be in a world with swords and magic? As the last wisps of mana were absorbed from the stone, it started to crumble before turning to dust. Opening my bunker, I saw some monsters spawned, so I killed them quickly before finding the way to the next floor. Finding the stairs to the next floor didn't take much time, and as I walked up the stairs, I felt like running away from this floor. It wasn't the feeling of fear I felt when facing an enemy stronger than me, but a feeling like something really bad awaited me on this floor. Trying to sense the monsters on the floor, I could only detect one monster, and it was strong. It also gave me a different feeling from other monsters I met. Pushing that feeling aside, I entered the floor to see what the monster was. It didn't take long before I saw it, and now it made sense why it felt familiar. Not even 100 meters away from me stood the Juggernaut. Hiding behind a rock, I started observing it. Why did it appear here? I'm the only one here, and the dungeon hasn't been damaged much. The Juggernaut was also much stronger than the one I fought all those years ago. Judging just by the mana it emits was stronger than any monster I fought down here. Should I use Mirage Walk and sneak past it? If not for all the mana stones I can get here, I could use Mirage Walk with illusion magic and mana rotation, and I could walk out of this place. This Juggernaut could be a challenge to kill, but in the worst case, I'll just run away. I started slowly walking towards the juggernaut, still using Mirage Walk to hide my mana signature. As I was ready to attack the monster, its head snapped at me with a speed that would break if it was human. Shit. How did it sense me? Not the time to think about it. Preparing myself for the fight, I activated Thunderclap Impulse activated, but no attack came. That was when it spoke in a feminine voice. I finally found you, my love. My mind blanked for a moment. The juggernaut was speaking and called me love. So it became a Xenos. And it called me love. There was one thing to do now. Goodbye. I said, and with a 180-degree turn, I started running. Hell, I don't care if the juggernaut turned into a Xenos, but I knew that when a juggernaut calls you love, you should run. Why are you running, my love? I heard her yell but didn't care. I started to use every possible way to go faster and even used illusions, but to my dismay, I somehow ran into a dead end. Turning back to look at the juggernaut, I couldn't run so with straight in the face, I said. Miss, I think you got the wrong guy. Chapter 16, Remy. Arthur Leywin. The Xenos juggernaut just looked at me for what seemed like an eternity. You think I would mistake the smell of my love? She said with anger in her tone. Shit. This is worse than I thought. If this were a normal juggernaut, I could escape, but this is out of my league. She even managed to track me while I was invisible. He. Sorry, but I don't remember meeting you, so if you could let me leave You. After what you did to me that day. How could you forget? Is she mad I killed her? Well, I would be mad at the person who killed me, but why did she call me love? How could you act like this after you shoved that long thing inside me? What? Hey, don't phrase it like that. People would misunderstand. I yelled at her after I figured out what she meant. I mean, I did do that, but it was a sword, not my Ekam. This is awkward. We just stared at each other without saying anything. At least she doesn't want to kill me, so I should be safe for now. So, Miss Juggernaut, do you have a name? I asked her. You can call me Remy, my love. She answered with an excited tone. Well, Remy, I would love to stay and chat with you, but I need to get out of here so. See you later. I said and tried to get out of this situation, but I wasn't lucky. Remy quickly moved to the side, blocking me from walking further. I can't let you leave right after finding you, love. Erg. That didn't work, but why must she call me love? I see, but could you stop calling me love? My name is Arthur, so call me Arthur. I said while scratching the back of my head, not knowing what to do. Taking a deep breath, I relaxed a bit. This could have been much worse, and having a juggernaut that doesn't want to kill me is a good thing. Maybe I could even use that to my advantage. Hey, Remy, do you know what floor we are on? This should be floor 69. Nice. So a few more floors and I could return. That's good news. Could you help get back to the surface? I asked Remy. Love asked me to help. Hi. He must love me. She started muttering, and I could swear I saw her red eyes turn to hearts. I stared at her with a deadpan expression. Seriously, what is wrong with her? Could you help me collect the magic stones? I asked her. Of course, my love, I'll do my best. She said. And this was how the juggernaut Xenos Remy became my supporter. Sylvie. I sat comfortably in the hood of Mama's cloak while she and the rest of the familia fought the monsters. They tried to find Papa and even went down to the 43rd floor, but when I told her that Papa was deeper down the dungeon, she didn't give up and still tries her best to grow stronger and find him. Oh, he is here again. Mama, the stinky cat is here again. I told Mama when I sensed the stupid cat that had been tailing us for some time now. When Papa was teleported away, I started to train myself so that when he returned, I could protect him and Mama. I also remember the other me had another Mama, but she was stupid, unlike my Mama. I recalled Papa's memories about another Papa and me and used the memories to make some new spells and techniques. So after some time, I became good at sensing people's mana, and that's how I found the stinky cat one day after we visited the hostess. Where is he hiding this time? In the shadow behind the rock. I told Mama and was ready to attack if he tried to attack Mama. The smelly Strake had observed us the whole way until we left the dungeon, and then he went to the higher floors of Babel. Freya. The fox is still with that elf, and I didn't see the bra. Kid. You can leave now. I told him and returned to look over the city. Where have you gone, my otter? I thought as I remembered what one of my executives told me about the incident on the 28th floor. Crack. The sound of cracking would snap me out of my thinking as I looked at the destroyed armrest of my throne. Tisk. I clicked my tongue, another one destroyed. Otter, did you find anything? I asked my strongest child. Apart from the strange behavior of the monster in the deeper floors, we couldn't find anything regarding Arthur Leywin. Probably seeing my expression, he decided to add something else. My lady, from what I have observed from the boy during his years as an adventurer is that he is strong enough to rival level 6 adventures, maybe even stronger. He should be able to return safely if he doesn't do anything stupid. I was angry if I made him join my familia when we met that day. Now because of Astrea and that stupid elf, he could be gone. If not for Otter stopping me, I would have killed her and her whole familia. Arthur Leywin. I sat on the rock chair I made while Remy killed all the monsters on the floor and brought me the magic stones. One thing that is better than fighting is getting stuff for free without doing anything. The only thing missing is the sun and a chilled drink. Not the time. Let's continue absorbing the stones. You should get ready. The next floor is the glacier territory, my low. Art. Ah, thank you, Remy. I said, absorbing the last stone, and we continued for the next floor. When we walked through the large passage, the chill from the upcoming floor hit me, and I was forced to use a layer of fire mana to keep myself from freezing. Chapter 17, Zeno's Village. Arthur Leywin. We walked up, ignoring the freezing temperature of the floor, and the first thing that greeted me was the view of ice covering the whole area. If I didn't go through the assimilation process for my beast will, using fire mana wouldn't be enough. Thankfully I did, and now it was just slightly cold, but I don't want to stay here longer than necessary. Remy guided me towards the next floors while I observed the monsters this floor spawned. From monsters completely made out of ice to creatures like the giant ice bear that could manipulate ice as a weapon and shield, reminding me of my mana sword and ice armor spells. Their ice armor consisted of multiple smaller parts that quickly restored themselves after being destroyed, unlike my ice armor spell consisted of a few parts that, when broken, caused me to reform the whole part from scratch. This was one reason that I didn't use it often, and the other was that I kinda forgot about it. But if I recreated it out of smaller parts, then I could use pure mana, which is stronger but harder to use than ice, but with smaller parts, it would be more effective. I continued thinking about how to make the spell while we made our way through the floors. The coldness started fading as we walked up the stairs. But, even if the cold was bearable due to my magic, I still didn't want to return there without warm clothes. We walked into a large rectangular room made out of graphite, and inside were lots of 10-meter-tall red dragons standing on both their legs. Remy shielded me from the incoming fire breath, and we quickly started killing them, with Remy just being the juggernaut and me using my sword and ice attacks. I didn't know if they were more effective, but considering they're using fire, I should be a good option. The next floor changed and became a labyrinth consisting of many corners. The walls, ground, and ceiling were flat, making the structure seem carefully measured and just enough for Remy to fit through. Hey, Remy, what can you tell me about this floor? Thankfully Remy was like a walking encyclopedia for the dungeon, so I could ask her about everything I didn't know. She seemed to think for a second before answering. As you can see, this and the next 8 floors are a labyrinth consisting of monsters like Cadmus, Vigras, venom scorpions, thunder snakes, and others. The dragons we just fought were Valgang dragons. The floors are also called the Dragon's Vase, as starting from the 52nd floor, the Valgang dragons on the 58th floor lock onto adventurers' positions and fire flares through multiple floors. She said as if reciting it from a book. How does she even know that? I know she lives down here, but to know the things about everything and what they are called by adventurers. Maybe it's another perk of being a juggernaut. We are almost there, my low. Art. She said and continued to guide me. Almost where? I asked, not knowing what she was talking about as we just entered the floor. I'm going to show you to all my family and friends, and there is a shortcut to the village on this floor. She said, and I could hear the excitement in her tone. Village. I started thinking before remembering that the Xenos have a secret village. Wait. Is she bringing me there? Actually, this could be good. If I remember correctly, the village should be located around the 20th floor, and I could have access to the shortcut in the future. Making our way through the floor, taking a few turns, we were met by a dead end. Noticing my confused look, Remy decided to explain. This is a secret passage that was discovered a few years ago that leads straight to our village. After she said that, she started tapping on different parts of the wall. At first, nothing happened, but after a while, the wall started to separate, but it wasn't big enough for Remy to pass through. As I was to point that out to her, I was blinded by a glow from her, similar to how Sylvie changed her form, but what I saw made me stop. Instead of a big scary-looking juggernaut, I saw the cute little version of it. She was the same size as me, but she didn't just shrink. The two horns she had changed shape into what almost looked like a crown, and the color of her skin changed to more of a navy blue color. But before I could ask her about the transformation, she spoke. No time to wait, adventurers could show up at any time here. I couldn't say anything, so I just nodded and felt she reminded me of someone, but I couldn't figure out who. After we passed, the wall started to close again, and I considered entering Realmheart how this was made, but I could do it another time. The walk took us around 20 minutes before we entered the village. As we entered, I could feel tens of different gazes on me from the surrounding Xenos, some out of hostility and some out of curiosity. I decided to ignore them and followed Remy to the center of the village, where we met a lizardman Xenos wearing a full set of armor and wielding a scimitar and a long sword. After observing me for a while, he decided to speak. You must be Arthur Leywin, right? I was surprised he knew my name, and it clearly showed because he decided to explain it. After your disappearance, Fels asked us to report to him if we found a young boy with white hair and lavender eyes. Fels asked. I didn't meet him or Auranas after the whole Evelys thing, so I thought they wouldn't even notice my disappearance. I see. I replied awkwardly, still feeling all of them staring at me in the distance. Ah. I haven't introduced myself, I'm Lyd. He said, putting his hand forward for a handshake while scratching the back of his head with the other. Arthur Leywin, but I guess you already knew that. I said while shaking his hand. We talked for a while around a fire, and after some time, most of the Xenos returned to doing what they were doing before we arrived here, and Remy went to talk to a harpy Xenos. I'm surprised you are so calm. Most adventurers would have been scared or even attacked us. Lyd said. Well, I have spent some time with Remy now, and seeing other intelligent monsters isn't surprising anymore. I said with a chuckle. Haha. You are right. She can look scary, but she's a nice girl. She was even the first to look after you when Fels asked us. Yeah, we have some history. I said while scratching the back of my head. Ah, so that's it. Lyd said while nodding his head, but for some reason, I think he misunderstood what I meant. We continued to talk, and some other Xenos approached me, asking me about the surface, and I answered their questions the best way I could before he showed me the exit from the village, while the other Xenos kept Remy busy so she wouldn't know that I had left, which I appreciated. Having spent some time with her, I had a feeling that if she knew I was leaving, she would follow me. With a last handshake, I left, and I could finally return. I don't even know how long I was gone. Chapter 18, Leaving the Dungeon. Arthur Leywin. It didn't take long to leave the dungeon after I left the Xenos village. Just as I stepped out, the rays of sunlight hit my face, and I stayed there watching the cloudless sky. How long has it been since I saw it last? I could imagine what the Xenos would feel about seeing it when I'm reacting like this after being stuck in the dungeon while they have always been there and can't leave. Why can't we live together? What is the difference between the animal people walking around the city and the Xenos? What if I could help them make a hidden village on the surface? The Jinn could make the relic tombs where no Azura could enter. Could I also make it for them? You're alive. Q. Papa. Two voices snapped me out of my thinking, and the next thing I knew, someone hugged me while crying. At first, I was surprised, so I didn't do anything, but I hugged her back when I saw who it was. Yeah. I'm back, Rio. And thanks for keeping Sylv safe. Rio hugged me even tighter, as if I would disappear if she let go. The people around us started looking at us, but I didn't care. You got stronger. I said she was much stronger than when I last saw her and could feel the smile forming on my face while looking at her and Sylvie. I'm finally back. Don't ever do it again, she said in a low voice. I won't. Now let's get back before people start talking about how the Gale has found a boyfriend, I said with a chuckle, trying to lighten the mood. Yeah, let's go back, she said, and I could see a small smile on her face before she grabbed my hand and dragged me toward the Stardust Garden. So, how long have I been gone? I asked the question I had been thinking about for a while now. 4 months. When Sylvie told me you were alive, I tried to find you, but I wasn't. She couldn't finish her sentence and tightened her grip on my hand. Wait, Sylvie told her. I looked at Sylvie for the answer. I gave Mama a bond connection. She could do that. Don't blame yourself. All that matters now is that I'm back now and even stronger than before. We continued walking towards the Stardust Garden without saying anything, and just as we were about to enter, an annoying voice reached our ears. So the princess is alive. My eyes started twitching, and for the first time, I regretted coming back. You know, Ada, I'm starting to regret coming back now, I replied to the girl watching us right now. She was one of the new members of the Familia. She joined a few months after we took care of the Rudra Familia. She was a blue-haired human girl, and she loved to annoy everyone. Don't mind her, Arthur. She took your disappearance almost as bad as Rio. Gods Astrea, thank you for keeping Sylv safe and trying to find me. I thank the goddess who has treated me like one of her own children for the past few years I've known her. You don't need to thank us. After the first few weeks, we started thinking you were gone, but Rio wouldn't give up, she said with a regretful tone before hugging both me and Rio. It's good you're back now. I couldn't blame her. Someone being gone for 4 months is long enough to think it's too late. I get it. I would also give up searching for someone after 4 months. Well, we were about to eat before Ryu ran out, and your returning should be a good cause for celebration, she said, changing the topic. Yeah. It's good to be back. So, how did you survive all this time? After our small reunion outside the Stardust Garden, I went inside and met the other members, and they had lots of questions, but fortunately, Astrea calmed them down. And that leads us to this moment where I'm sitting around the large table, and everyone is staring at me, expecting answers. If this was me in my previous life, I would probably be scared to even talk with everyone looking at me. Before I explain it, what happened to the crystal? I asked, looking at Rio. The stone disappeared with you, she said, and I looked at the stone in my hand. Is this just a piece of the crystal, or did the crystal shrink into this little stone? Does it even matter? Has something like this happened before, Lady Astrea? I asked the goddess, hoping no one would ever stumble upon a crystal like this. I was lucky to survive with all my powers, and a high-level mana core made it quite easy for me, but an ordinary adventurer would have died during the first week, if not the first day. No, this was the first time I heard about such a crystal. I see. That's good. But I should explain what happened after before I get petrified by all the stares, I said with a slight chuckle and started thinking about everything that happened after the crystal. Well, let's begin just after I got teleported. After I woke up, I was on a safe floor in the dungeon. I continued explaining how I fought the new types of monsters to the funny-tasting fruits, omitting the parts about me absorbing the mana from the stones and everything about the Xenos. While I knew I could trust them, this was something that related to other people, not just me, so I shouldn't reveal it yet. Fells asked them if they could find me, so he should get the news soon if he hasn't already, and if he knows, Auranas knows too. So you alone managed to explore the dungeon more than the Zeus Familia did with all their high-leveled adventurers? They asked in shock after I told them the whole story. If I had an option, I wouldn't do that myself. So when are you coming back? Ryu asked me while looking sad I would be leaving again. I'm going to stay with them for a few months before returning with my sister, I told her and took Sylvie from her. Stay safe then, she said, and I could feel something touching my lips in a flash. My brain shut down at that moment. I didn't know what to do or think, so I stood there dumbfounded as Ryu ran back to the Stardust Garden completely red. Mama kissed you. Sylvie teased me and laughed when she looked at my face. Wait, she is talking normally. Chapter 19, Angry Bella. Arthur Leywin. I woke up early morning and took a warm shower, something I couldn't do in the dungeon. While I used water magic to get a quick shower, nothing would beat taking a slow relaxing shower, especially when no monster is trying to attack you while naked. I need to forget that. After all this time I spent fighting monsters. It's time to take a small break and visit Bella and Grandpa. I was supposed to visit them after I returned from the dungeon dive but got slightly delayed. At least I returned without major injuries, just small scars. But what made me smile was the cracks around my core. Thanks to Remus's help, I got enough magic stones to almost break into high silver. Turning off the magic stone-powered shower, I dried myself with fire magic and put on my clothes. My current outfit was similar to the one I had before. Loose black long-sleeved shirt with a cloak lined with soft white fur around its hood. A pair of black pants, soft leather shoes, and my sword strapped to my waist. What can I say? I like black clothes, and the cloak reminded me of the one Gray had in Alacria, so I bought a few. After putting them on, I left my apartment and approached the gate, where I passed without any problems. After being a bit away from Horario, I started augmenting my body and using wind magic to increase my speed. Enjoying the cold air, I started thinking about what happened yesterday. Not only did Ryu kiss me, but apparently, Sylvie learned how to talk normally without using mental communication. It's going to be an awkward meeting next time. Does Ryu know you can speak now? I asked her, slightly moving my head to the right to see her. No, I wanted to tell you first. She said with a proud face that looked slightly arrogant, but it looked too funny in her fox form. Freya. Lady Freya, we have gotten reports that Arthur Leywin has returned from the dungeon. This made me quickly stand up from my throne and look at Otter, ready to go and meet my Otter again. Where is he? I need to see him now. I can't let him disappear again. YKHMMM. He left Horario. He left. He left. Arthur Leywin. As the house came into view, I saw Bella doing her daily training with the short sword I bought her a few years back. Deciding to pull a small prank, I created a quick illusion to make myself invisible, and when I was close enough, I conjured a water ball and dropped it on her. When the water hit her, she shrieked loudly and jumped. As she was looking around, I couldn't hold it anymore and started laughing with Sylvie. The illusion started flickering due to this so Bella could see us, and her expression changed many times before she picked up her sword and slowly walked towards me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hello, big brother. She paused for a while before continuing. You know you made Grandpa and me worried when you didn't visit for over half a year. Bella, I can explain. I said, dodging the swing while Sylv jumped off me and ran inside the house. You can explain afterward. She said and continued to attack me, so I drew my sword and reinforced it after seeing the blade again. The sword was chipped, dull, and looked like it would break at any moment. I seriously need a Durandal enchanted weapon. Not thinking about the sword for now, we continued for almost an hour until Bella was tired. With my and Grandpa's help, she became efficient in using a sword and could easily fight against monsters. She only needs real-life experience now so she doesn't freeze in the middle of a fight. You two should get in. Dinner is ready. Turning around, I saw Grandpa watching us. Good to see you, Gramps. I said and hugged him before entering the house. We made our way to the table, where the food was already placed, and Sylv was already eating her share. So why didn't you visit us for so long? Grandpa asked, and Bella glared at me with an expression that told me it would bring pain if she didn't like the answer. Well, you see, the dungeon dive I went on before I was planning to visit you, well, didn't go as planned. When I started explaining everything that happened, excluding the Xenos. Mostly because of Bella, I don't think she should know about them yet. During my whole explanation, their expression changed. Bella's changed from the angry one to being worried and sometimes even having stars in her eyes, completely forgetting how dangerous it was. While Grandpa was very interested in the floors and monsters I encountered on the previously unexplored floors. And that's why I couldn't visit sooner. I finished retelling everything. I didn't think the floors would look like that. He said while looking like he was reminiscing about the past. Brother, could you tell me the part when you fought those monsters again? Bella asked, practically jumping around the room with stars in her eyes. "Papa, you forgot about the part when Mama kissed you," Sylv said while snickering. While I looked at her with a betrayed expression, Bella and Grandpa looked at her with surprise. But it didn't take long for them to recompose themselves, and Bella looked at Sylv, and the stars in her eyes intensified. "Sylv can talk," she shouted while pointing at her, while Sylvie just made a smug expression. "So, who's this Mama?" Grandpa asked, interested in knowing who this Mama Sylv was talking about more than Sylvie talking. "It's none of your concern, old man," I said, but looked in the other direction. This made him burst into laughter. "Ah. To be young," he said, wiping a tear. A small smile formed on my face as I thought about how I missed this while being stuck alone in the dungeon. While at the same time, I'm thankful I got stuck there. If not for the crystal sending me so deep down the dungeon, I wouldn't progress my core to almost high silver in this short amount of time. Taking one last look at the stone stuck in my hand, I quickly wondered what the future held for me and went back to eating before Sylvie had the chance to steal my food. Chapter 20, Training. Arthur Leywin. "Come on, big brother, let's go," Bella said while jumping around me like a kid about to get a present. "Let's eat breakfast first, Bella, then we can go and train," I said with a sigh. Since I arrived here 2 days ago, she has wanted me to teach her new techniques. Usually, I wouldn't mind it, but at least allow me to eat breakfast first. Do you know what it means to be even 1 minute late for breakfast? It means Sylv will have enough time to steal my portion of the food, and I can't let that happen again. When we arrived at the kitchen, I already saw Sylv trying to snatch more food, but a small water ball shot her way and made her back off. Giving Sylv a smirk, I sat down at the table and started eating a piece of toast with an egg on top while thinking about a plan on how to make a safe place for the Xenos on the surface. While I could make a village hidden somewhere for them, the chances of a random adventurer finding it were too big, so I needed to figure out a way to make it so only the Xenos and people allowed could enter. At first, I started thinking about the relic tombs again, but quickly scratched the idea due to the difficulty of making them. While I believe I have some Jinn blood and should be able to guide ether to help me, making something as advanced as the relic tombs for just me is too difficult. After trying to scale it down, I remembered the sanctuary the Dicathans hid in after the war. While I couldn't remember the details, I think it was made so that it would make people not want to enter it. It was like making them believe they were walking for a long time or making them so scared that they would run away. This idea could work, but I would need more time to think about it and get a better grasp on ether. While I don't have an ether core, I could still try and learn how to guide it to assist me, but the problem is that I don't know how to get the spell forms. If I remember correctly, the god runes Arthur got were just higher forms of the spell forms. But the problem is that Arthur could directly manipulate ether from his core, so he could skip the whole step of guiding ether. But was it the ether crystal containing the memories of the Jinn that gave him the runes, or was it just his insight into that branch of ether that gave it to him? "Are you finished? Can we train now?" Bella's voice snapped me out of my thinking, and I looked down at my plate only to see it empty. Looking to my left, I saw Sylv munching on my food. Noticing my gaze, she just smirked and continued eating. I sighed, thinking how much I still had to learn. "Don't just charge in without a plan like that," I said, tripping her, and she fell headfirst onto the grass. A problem I noticed is that she gets frustrated after she can't hit her opponent for a while and starts charging without thinking. While this wouldn't be a problem against low-level monsters, she can't do that on the lower floors or against adventurers. So my goal before we return to Orario is to train it out of her by making her taste the grass. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" She yelled at me with grass in her hair and mud on her face, angry because I did it for the 7th time today. "What? Me? No, this is for the greater good," I said, but couldn't hold in the laugh while looking at her. "Okay, I'm maybe enjoying this a bit too much, but this is for the greater good." "Yes, totally for the greater good, not just to have a laugh." "You," she growled, seeing me laughing, charging at me only to meet the grass again. "See, you would have been killed if this was a real fight," I said this time, completely serious, so she would understand how important this was. If you can't control your emotion during a fight, one small mistake can lead you to death. Sighing, I sat down and continued. "I know you want to enter the dungeon, but you must learn these things. I have made those mistakes but was lucky the people around me were good. So that's why I need you to learn and don't make the same mistakes I've made. Let's take a 10-minute break and continue. After I said that, she looked deep in thought, so I let her be. She must figure it out herself while I here can guide her now. I won't be there forever. After the short break, we continued sparring, and I could see that she was improving. I'm happy she is a quick learner. Learning from one's mistakes and adapting quickly is the best way for an adventurer to survive. Art, do you think I will be able to use magic as you do? She asked me after our training session. I'm sure you will. From my understanding, the fauna works on your desire, so it's possible. I told her, but the chances of her gaining a magic skill like mine are almost none. But my understanding of the fauna is small. If I remember correctly, the OG Belle got his skill due to wanting to be as strong as Ace, so she could get a magic skill that would allow her to manipulate an element. The only skill I would be similar to my magic is aerial, basically allowing the user to manipulate the wind. But Ace got it due to being the daughter of the wind spirit Arya. Chapter 21, Bella's Arrival. Arthur Leywin. Before we went to sleep, Grandpa wanted to talk to me, so we stood outside observing the night sky. It was a beautiful full moon with thousands of stars shining brightly. Arthur, at first, I didn't want to tell you and Bella this, but knowing it would be difficult to hide that something is off, I decided to tell you my secret. He waited for a bit before continuing. I wanted more time watching you and Bella grow, but not everything goes as planned. You going and becoming an adventurer so early, and everything you went through at such a young age. He stayed silent, looking like he was thinking about what to say next. When Bella was born, I promised to protect her, and when I found you in the forest, I took you in so she could have a brother when I'm not here. But, honestly, it was due to my selfish desire at first. He looked at the moon with a regretful expression. At first, I wanted you and Bella to continue where I failed, but when you were growing up, I realized how selfish I was and tried to support you both the best I could. After he said that, we stood there in silence, looking at the night sky. While you sometimes act like a fool, you were a good granddad to both Bella and me, so you shouldn't think so much about the past. I broke the silence while mentally laughing at how hypocritical I sounded. Telling an old god not to think about it while thinking about it the whole time myself. Well, it's better to say thinking about the possible future, but still. It's good I did something right, at least. He said, and it seems what I said helped him a bit. But I shouldn't have kept this secret from the both of you for so long. Before you both were born, I'd made many enemies, so I hid in this little village where few people visited. So when you leave, I will leave this village, and we won't be able to see each other for a while. So they have found where you are? I asked, wondering if this was the reason he faked his death in the novel. Well, not exactly. They didn't find me, but someone much scarier found me. He said, slightly sweating while mentioning the scarier person. Who is this person? I decided to ask him so I could avoid them in the future. Bella's grandma. And well, we may be separated on not so good terms. He said like he was talking about the devil and trying not to look me in the eyes. I just looked at him with a dumbfounded expression, not saying anything. I quickly deduced who he was talking about, but I couldn't understand for what reason he faked his death just so he wouldn't be found by her. Hey, the scariest opponent you can face is a mad woman. Remember this, so you don't make the same mistakes I did. He said, shaking me, and I burst out laughing, completely breaking the serious atmosphere. So, what mistake did you make? I asked after he stopped shaking me while holding back my laughter. I wanted to make a harem. He said, not looking at me again. Of course, what else did I expect from this pervert? We continued discussing different things before I fell asleep in my room. Basically, his plan is to fake his own death after we leave tomorrow, and when we return another time, we will get the news of his passing from the other villagers. And all this because he is scared of Hera. Can't he just say he is going to explore the world or something? Early morning we said goodbye to Grandpa and left. Due to me being stronger and capable of using magic, I had Bella on my back, running at full speed to Orario. Knowing it was the last time we would visit this village for a long time. As we ran through the empty roads leading to Orario, Bella had the best time of her life, enjoying traveling this way while Sylvie dug her tiny claws into my head so she wouldn't fall off. I slowed down when we neared the gate, and Bella jumped off my back. We walked to the gate where Bella needed to follow the same check I did when I first arrived. Thankfully we were the only ones entering the city from this gate at the moment, so it didn't take us much time, and we entered Orario without any problems. The registration process at the guild went smoothly, so I decided to show her around Orario after she got the Falna, so we went straight to the Stardust Garden. As for Hestia, I'm sure she can find someone. I watched as Bella introduced herself to the members of the Astrea Familia, slightly embarrassed due to being the center of attention, while Astrea and I watched from the sidelines. But unfortunately, they decided to say something I wanted to stay hidden from her. Don't worry. You are Princess's little sister, so we will protect you. I wanted to hide when I heard the nickname. I thought they wouldn't mention it around her. Princess? Bella asked, looking at me, not understanding what they meant. That's our nickname for your brother. One time he disguised himself as A. She didn't have the chance to finish as a small wind bullet hit her forehead at her, making her fall off the chairs. They all turned to look at me. What, I did nothing. Let's not tease Art in front of his little sister now. Lady Astrea came in to save me, but then I noticed a slight smirk on her face. And if we call someone a princess, it should be Ryu 4. She couldn't finish her sentence as a completely red Ryu covered her mouth. No, no, Ryu, we must hear this. They all said in unison. Thankfully Lady Astrea didn't say anything and went with Sylv and Bella to get her blessing, and I was now stuck here looking awkwardly at Ryu, not knowing what to say with everyone looking at us. Hey, Ryu, could we talk in private? I asked so we could at least talk without everyone looking at us. Bella Cranel. I couldn't hold my excitement as I walked with Lady Astrea to a separate room. I would finally get a blessing and become strong as brother. He was always strong and could use cool magic. He can even go to the dungeon without a blessing from a god. When we arrived, Lady Astrea told me to remove my shirt and show my back so she could begin. It didn't take much time, and Lady Astrea gave me a sheet of paper after the glow faded. Looking at it, I couldn't stop feeling disappointed. Bella Cranel. LVL1. STR, I0. End, I0. Dex, I0. AGI, I0. Mag, I0. Magic. Skills. Even if I got the blessing, I was still weak with all the stats on I0 and no magic or skills. Seeing my sad face, Lady Astrea explained that it was normal for new adventurers to start off at 0 and that I would grow stronger. Yes, I would grow strong and be like Big Brother. After saying that, I left the room to find Big Brother and Miss Rio. Holding hands. Noticing me, they both looked at me without saying anything before they could say anything. Sylvie got a huge grin on her face. So when do I become a big sister? She asked before starting to laugh. For some reason, both Brother and Miss Rio became completely red after hearing that. I should ask them later. Deciding to leave them alone, I went to the living hall, where everyone was chatting. Chapter 22, Custom Order. Arthur Leywin. I need to get Bella some starting equipment and a new sword for myself, but what about going out just the two of us afterward? I asked Rio. How about going to the family-owned restaurant you told me about? What was the name? Yukihira something. She answered, and I smiled at her. If you want to go there, I don't see why not. Oh, and you missed my birthday, so you owe me my favorite dessert. She joked, and we went to the others only to see Bella completely red and steam coming from her head. Bees and birds. She muttered over and over again. What happened to Bella? I asked them, confused. Oh, nothing, she just asked us something, and we answered her, Ada answered, while the rest just nodded while chuckling. My mind went back to what Sylvie said, and I pieced it together. Did they just corrupt my little sister? Maybe I should invite Remy to finish the job. Storing the thought for later if necessary, I waited for Bella's brain to reboot before taking her to get her the equipment, starting with the married blade so I could make a custom order. During the years of adventuring, I haven't spent much, so I had enough to make it, and I really enjoyed using the sword I got as a gift from Grandpa, so I wanted a similar one. Entering the store, I saw the sometimes crazy old man who had been selling and repairing my swords for almost 4 years. Oh, if it isn't my favorite brat, haven't seen you for a while, so how can I help you? My eyes twitched slightly, and he smirked. For years and he still calls me Brat instead of my name. Hello, Mr. Shiro. I'm here to make a custom order for a sword. I told him with a smile. Oh, now you got me interested. What kind of sword do you want? He asked, putting both hands on the table and leaning forward. A straight narrow blade thin like a rapier but with a double edge, so it can be used for slashing and thrusting and made of a material that can conduct a large amount of mine through. As for the enchantments, I want the Durandal and sharpness effect. Oh, and preferably could you make the scabbard not so eye-catching? He seemed to like my idea and already started muttering about different things on how to make it before looking at me and saying, You got it, Brat. Come back in a week. I got the perfect material for you, especially your magic. I got excited after hearing that most of my swords broke due to overuse of mana, so I needed to reveal a bit about my magic so he could help me get something durable. Now if I can get something that won't break, that would be perfect. He picked out a small round object that I instantly recognized as the marble I gave him all those years ago before shooing us out of the store, saying not to disturb him until he was done forging. He even closed his store and went into what I call his marble mode, so I knew it was best not to disturb him until he returned to normal. After we left the store, we went to look for some light armor Bella could wear in a backpack. It didn't take long for her to find one that suited her and didn't restrict any movements, so we started walking back to the Stardust Garden. Hey, Art, what does your armor look like? She asked while looking at her armor with stars in her eyes. Well, you see, I don't wear one. I answered while scratching my cheek and looking at the sky. She stopped and looking me with her mouth open. What? She yelled and tried dragging me back to the store. You told me armor is important, so you need one too. Bella, I'm fine. I don't need one. I have a spell that creates armor for me. But I forget about it every time. I told her with the last part in a low voice so she couldn't hear it. Really? Can you show me? After hearing about magical armor, she immediately forgot what she was doing, so I chuckled. Mention magic, and she completely forgets what she was doing. Yes, I'll show you when we get back, I told her and patted her head. While we are a similar age, she is almost 2 heads shorter than me. Well, I'm taller than most my age and could be mistaken for a 14-year-old. We continued walking towards Mike's shop to buy her healing potions. I feel bad for him. He is a kind, compassionate, and friendly God willing to go into debt to help one of his children, and they just leave him, so I have been buying potions from him. If I were reincarnated here under different circumstances, he would be the first God I would consider joining. Thankfully it hasn't happened yet, so I can only be happy for him. Entering the store, we were greeted by Mike himself. Oh, Arthur, I haven't seen you for a while. I started to get worried. He stopped for a while when he saw Bella beside me, and who might this be? He asked. Oh, this is my sister Bella. She just became an adventurer, so we are getting her starting equipment. Hello, Lord Mayak. She said with a bow. I proceeded to buy potions for her, and she needed to drag me out of the store due to the number of potions I was about to buy, with Mayak chuckling, looking at us. Bella, you will need more potions. I tried to reason with her. I think 20 will be enough for the first floors. What if something happens? I asked her, trying to change her mind. I will be on the first floor where only kobolds and goblins spawn, and as you told me before, I will be able to kill them easily after getting the Falna. Plus, what would all those years of training mean if I couldn't even kill the weakest monsters? Fine, but just take a few more. Who knows if a stronger monster will appear on the lower floors? I said, holding 2 more potions in my hand. You are talking like a minotaur would appear on the lower floors. Fine. She agreed after a while, so I paid Mayak everything. Then we went to my apartment so I could quickly change my clothes and went straight back to Stardust Garden, where Bella would live because my apartment is too small for the 2 of us, and after spending most of my money, I won't be able to find anything bigger for a while. The other members quickly showed Bella her new room while I went to find Rio. Chapter 23, Time with Rio. Arthur Leywin. So, where do you want to go first? I asked Rio, who was walking beside me. We just left the Stardust Garden, and I left Sylvie with Bella, so it was just the 2 of us. Rhea thought about it for a while before she had a look that showed she had come up with something. Oh, I know. How about going to see the new stage play? I heard people talking about it and how good it was. She said with a smile, her eyes almost sparkling. Then let's go, I said with a smile. Most of the time, Rhea was calm and composed, so the times she acted like this were fun. It reminded me, especially of that incident a year ago. I chuckled slightly. What? She asked, looking at me, confused why I suddenly chuckled. Just remember when you got scared by that spider and tried and failed to kill it using magic. Of course, the spider escaped in the end, but the dining room was a mess. Her face reddened, and she looked away. I told you not to bring it up. Sorry, I just remembered it out of nowhere. I apologized while trying my best not to laugh. She puffed her cheeks in faked anger before a smirk formed on her face. You know, I just remembered it out of nowhere. She paused, and the smirk widened. Sylvie once told me when you were smaller. Ah, no. Let's forget about it, okay? I asked, trying not to listen to what she was about to say. I quickly made a mental note to punish Sylv later. I did spend a lot today, so cutting our meat supply should be alright. Only if you never mention that again. I sighed in defeat. Fine. We continued walking, joking around, and it didn't take long for us to arrive at the Familia-owned theater. I bought us 2 tickets, and we went in and found our seats. The play reminded me of the ones I saw in my previous life, but I couldn't remember the exact name, but that didn't matter as we both enjoyed it. After leaving the theater, we walked around the city, checking out different stalls in the market square. They sold things like magic items for kids to more practical stuff like a magically expanded water pouch that could hold double the amount of water. Things like that were created by people with the mystery development ability. It reminded me of the artifacts in Tibet. This world didn't have things like dimensional storage rings, so could someone create them with the mystery development ability, or could I do it without it? A small problem I encountered in the dungeons was the lack of things I could bring back. Most people would hire a supporter, but I would rather have someone like Rhea fighting alongside me. Why are you spacing out? Rhea's voice snapped me out of my thinking. Ah. I was thinking about magic items. I told her, and we walked toward the family-owned restaurant that had recently opened. The restaurant is a Japanese-style special off-the-day type restaurant owned by Joichiro Yukihira. The family came from the Far East to open the restaurant here in Orario. I found the restaurant one day after I bought a new sword and took the wrong turn by accident, and I could say that their food rivals, if not beats, the food served in the Hostess of Fertility. The owner was also less scary, so that's a big plus. Something I learned early on was that Mamma Mia isn't someone you should piss off and that she loves money. We sat down and got the menu. Looking at the menu, there were dishes from different cuisine styles like French, Japanese, Chinese, Italian, and a style called Yukihira style. In the end, we both decided to pick a dish called Mappo tofu meal. A Chinese full-course meal that consists of 1 Mappo tofu dish and 3 other staple dishes. So, how much stronger did you get while I was stuck in the dungeon? I asked her while we waited for the food. I'm almost level 5. I only need something to give the last push, she said, sounding annoyed at the last part. I discovered how hard it's to find a feat that would push an adventurer to the next level. She talked about what she tried to do to level up, but it wasn't enough. Our food didn't take long to arrive, and it looked and tasted delicious. The only complaint is that it wasn't spicy enough. I ordered the extra spicy version, but this is just slightly spicy. Looking at Rio, who looked like she ate the flames of hell, I suppressed myself from saying rejoice, and gave her a glass of water. Sorry, they must have misplaced our dishes. I chuckled, seeing her drinking another glass as I switched our Mappo tofu. Testing the other one, she smiled. This one is much better, she said, and I chuckled again before eating a spoonful of my extra spicy Mappo tofu. Perfect. How can you eat that with a smile? She asked me, surprised. Because the food is good, I answered simply, and we continued eating and telling stories during the time I was stuck in the dungeon. After we were done, I paid for the both of us, and we started walking back to the Stardust Garden, enjoying the Magicston illuminated view of Orario. Rio, can you close your eyes for a second? I asked, and when she did it, I took the necklace I bought her and put it around her neck. "You can open your eyes now," I said, and she looked at the necklace. "It's beautiful," she said and kissed me. "When I saw it, the gem reminded me of your eyes," I told her awkwardly, as it was the first time I bought a gift for her as my girlfriend. It's weird to actually think that I got a girlfriend when I reincarnated here. I didn't expect to have one." We continued walking, and as we got close, Sylvie sensed me, so she ran towards us before jumping into my hands. "So, how was your date?" she asked with a smirk, so I flicked her on the forehead. "Good, I even decided to stop buying meat for a while," I said with an evil smirk. Her eyes widened in horror before looking at Rio. "Mama. Tell Papa not to do it." Ryu also had the same evil smirk I had before, saying, "You know, Sylvie, you should eat more veggies." "No." We both chuckled, looking at her cry. Chapter 24, First Dungeon Dive. Arthur Leywin. In the early morning, I collected everything we needed for the day. I brought extra healing potions in case of emergencies and bandages in case the potions were not enough. I also brought mind potions if Bella somehow used magic. Although she had received a blessing and could easily navigate the first few floors, I did not want to take any risks and planned to assist her until she became familiar with fighting monsters. Sylvie noticed the potion flasks almost falling out of my backpack and reassured me that Bella would be fine. Although I attempted to express my concerns, Sylvie cut me off and reminded me that I would be accompanying Bella on the upper floors. I agreed and replied, "Fine." But before leaving my apartment, I packed only 20 extra potions and realized I had no sword. However, I didn't worry, as I could use basic conjured swords on the upper floors. I still had to wait for a week for my custom sword to be finished. After packing everything, I left my apartment and went to pick up Bella from the Stardust Garden for her first dungeon dive. "Have you double-checked to make sure you have everything?" I asked Bella, who let out a sigh of frustration. "I've already checked 3 times, and everything is in my backpack," she replied, sounding exhausted even before we entered the dungeon. "Just one more quick check, please," I requested. "Okay, I'll do it for the last time," she said as she searched through her backpack. After she finished checking everything, we left the Stardust Garden and headed towards the dungeon. Walking down the stairs to the first floor, Bella tried her best to hold back her excitement to explore the dungeon, but it clearly showed on her face. Grandpa even caught her one day sneaking out in the middle of the night just to go to Orario and become an adventurer early. Thankfully, one of our neighbors saw it and told Grandpa. "Doesn't she know it's dangerous for a kid to become an adventurer?" "Papa, you and her are the same age," Sylvie communicated through our mental connection. "Yes, but mentally I am about 20 years older," I responded. "Most of the time, it doesn't seem like it," Sylvie commented. As we entered the first floor, I reminded Bella about the types of monsters we would encounter. "There are only 2 types of monsters on this floor," I informed her: Kobold, which is a dog-headed creature, and Goblin, which is a green, plump humanoid monster with large eyes. They are considered the weakest monsters in the dungeon. I then went on to tell her about the 3rd and rarest monster on this floor, the jackbird. It looks like a rooster with fluffy yellow-green feathers, and although it isn't aggressive, it is incredibly fast and runs away if it senses any enemies. The drop item from the jackbird is worth at least 1 million valis, I mentioned. I also noted that Miss Ina had already taught Bella everything about the first floor, and I made a mental note to thank her for it. "Have you ever seen a jackbird?" she asked, scanning the area for any sign of monsters. "I haven't seen or heard of anyone finding one in the 4 years I've been here," I replied honestly. There weren't many monsters spawning on the first floor, and many new adventurers being on the first floor didn't help. Thankfully, we entered early in the morning before this floor got crowded, and Bella could fight most of the monsters that spawned without any issues. This floor is too easy for her. We should go down to the 2nd or 3rd floor so she at least has a challenge," Sylvie said, and I was torn between agreeing and disagreeing because this was her first time in the dungeon and not anything else. I wasn't worried at all. I sighed. "Bella, let's go down to the 2nd floor." I told her and started walking towards the 2nd floor with Bella flicking off the monster's blood from her blade and running to catch up with me. I explained the 2nd floor and the new monster that would appear after she caught up to me. She faced a slight challenge from the dungeon lizards but quickly adapted and made fewer mistakes over time. It's impressive, considering it was her first time in the dungeon. The speed at which she adapts makes it so she can become one of the best adventurers in the future. Hopefully, she won't need anyone's help to acquire a particular skill, especially if that person is a boy. I unintentionally scared Bella and the monsters on the floor with my killing intent that I didn't know I was releasing until Sylvie told me. We walked up the stairs back to the surface after a long battle. The blessing of a goddess made her much stronger than an ordinary mortal, enabling her to fight for a longer time without getting exhausted. Comparing it to our sparring session just last week, she got tired after 2 hours of training. However, now she can fight for hours before feeling exhausted. We decided to sell the magic stones at a later time and walked back to the Stardust Garden, with Bella telling me about her fight as if I hadn't been present during it. Now I just have to make sure she doesn't begin dating until she reaches the age of 40. Sylvie questioned, "Isn't that too old?" while giving me a deadpan look. I replied, "No, it's not too old, and the rule applies to you as well." She was left speechless, unsure of how to respond. Chapter 25, Moon's Embrace. Arthur Leywin. I don't think this is appropriate for our age, Rio. I told her with a deadpan expression while chained to a chair. Don't say it like that. She shouted, turning around so I couldn't see her face, but I saw her ears turning slightly red. Well, you did chain me to a chair while I was asleep. It's not my fault you are so overprotective over Bella that you won't let her enter the dungeon alone, even after 2 weeks. You can't always be there for her. I know you're right, but you should also know I can easily break the chains, right? I asked her, raising one eyebrow. But you won't do that, she said, the embarrassment gone replaced by a slight smirk. Curious, I asked her, and why is that? Because I said so, and I just remembered a story Sylvie told me. She paused for a while. I think the others will enjoy hearing it. Wow, to blackmail me. But why chain me down then? She didn't answer me and couldn't look me in the eyes. I see, so that's your key. I didn't have the chance to finish as I got hit in the face and fell with the chair. In the end, I stayed chained down until Bella returned from the dungeons. But I have been thinking about runes and how to use them to make artifacts for the past few weeks. Using runes would open a whole new space for magic. Not only would I be able to use them in combat, but I could also make them create a dimension ring. Having some time, I looked around Arario. I found a few books about runes, from the ones found on the Falna to runes used in the past. Then I also have the runes that appear on me while I use Realm Heart. I can use them as a reference, so I locked myself in my apartment, reading through the books and doing multiple tests like having a rune capable of activating fire when imbued with mana. If I learn how to create runes capable of using ether, I could make the rings and many other things, maybe even a lower form of a spell form. Ether consists of 3 different branches: vivum, existence; evum, time; and spatium, space. Spatium is the ether type that controls the existing space. Its power goes from teleportation to folding space to the user's will. Examples could be teleportation portals and God's Step. Evum is the ether type that controls the time of the world. It's also the branch I use for Static Void and is also used in the God rune Aroa's Requiem. Then the last branch is vivum, also known as the ether of existence. This ether was previously thought to only control life but actually of 4 types or branches: life, death, creation, and destruction. Now there is one small problem. I don't know where to start. Maybe I could study the gods and their divinity. I quickly scarped that thought. Asking gods to act like test subjects wasn't the best idea. Back to books it is, then. I continued to study the different runes and compared them to the runes from Realm Heart, but this was harder than I expected. Where are the child-obsessed super-genius villainous snakes when you need them? I sighed. Let's think about it later. Now I should get my new sword. I couldn't hold my excitement as I entered the Married Blades. Hello, Mr. Shiro. I greeted the old man, who also had an excited expression and a sword placed on the table. At first glance, it looked like a black rod, but I knew better, having had a few glimpses during the week when he was making the scabbard. You're finally here, brat. Took you long enough to arrive, he said, picking up the sword before giving it to me. I looked at it briefly before taking it out of the scabbard. The blade slid out easily, revealing an almost transparent crystal-like narrow blade that was thin like a rapier with a double edge curved smoothly into a sharp tip. What are you waiting for? Do your magic voodoo and see if it works. I used my best marble as a catalyst for it. He said he was getting impatient. Marble. I asked with a raised eyebrow. You think normal metal would work for a sword of this quality? He scoffed, it shows you don't know anything about swords. Now, don't ask questions, and do the magic voodoo. He said, annoyed. Taking in a deep breath, I hoped the blade wouldn't break when I infused it with all the basic elements. Well, let's do it. Why are you not doing anything? I won't need to pay for it if it breaks, right? I asked. Just do it, and don't waste my time, brat. He shouted and hit me with a fan that he got from somewhere. Sigh. No going back now. I started channeling fire, wind, earth, and water mana through the blade. It started changing from being transparent to having 4 different colors circling inside it, giving a slight glow similar to the moon. I smiled. It was stable. The other sword I used until now started breaking down after infusing them with more than one element, and even using one element shortened the lifespan of the swords. Thank you, Mr. Shiro, it's perfect. I thanked the old man and sheathed the sword again. Of course, it is. I made it. He said, looking proud and excited. Did you decide on a name for it? I asked him. Moon's Embrace. Chapter 26, Testing a New Sword. Arthur Leywin. Moon's Embrace, I repeated while not leaving my eyes off the beautiful blade. I have used so many swords in the past 4 years, but none of them could compare to the beauty of this one. While I couldn't say much about its sharpness until I tried it, the feeling I get while holding it makes me feel like no other sword could stand a chance against this one. What about the enchantments on it? I asked Shiro, who had a smug expression on his face. Ha. As you asked, this beauty got the Durandal and Sharpness enchantment. Then I added a few of my own enactments. He paused as his grin became bigger. First, we have the adjustment enchantment that will make the sword adjust its size to fit the you. Then I added an anti-theft enchantment that will make anyone besides you and me unable to unsheath it. He explained, and I couldn't help but be thankful for them. While I never had anyone steal my sword, it's better to be safe than sorry. Thank you, Mr. Shiro. I will put it to good use. I thanked him and couldn't hold myself from running straight to the dungeon and testing it out. He could probably see it, so he sighed, just go and make sure not to break this one otherwise, I will hunt you down. He said in a threatening tone. I won't. Probably. I said and scratching my cheek and backing towards the door, have a good day Mr. Shiro, I shouted after leaving the shop, having already paid for the sword a few days ago. I ignored the threats he was shouting and walked toward the dungeon. I couldn't hold my excitement. This is maybe only a sword, but being an adventurer who uses a sword as my primary weapon with the addition of magic, finally having a weapon that will allow me to use my magic to its full potential without destroying the weapon. At moments like this, I really feel like a real kid. A kid who is excited about a weapon that would easily kill my opponents. Entering the first floor, I quickly made my way toward the 10th floor while avoiding the weak monsters. While I like killing goblins like the next guy, I don't want to spoil my fun of testing the sword on a weak monster. Walking for a while, I encountered my opponents. It was a group of orcs. They are huge pig-headed monsters that can reach 3 meters in height. It wears its old hide at the waist like a skirt. It possesses enough strength to cause some level 2 adventurers to be unable to continue fighting after receiving a direct hit. While still weak, it will be enough for a test. Augmenting only my feet, I leapt towards the group, and with a clean slash, my sword went through the monster like butter. I grinned as the other orcs noticed one of them die and started charging toward me, ready to kill me. Now, let's have some fun, I said and dashed towards them, sliding between the legs of one, and I spun around with my sword cutting the legs off without any resistance. The orc fell head first onto the dungeon floor as I jumped in the air before landing perfectly behind another orc who got his magic stone pierced. Sensing an attack coming from behind, I spun around, slashing the hands of one orc and then kicking his head off his body. UPS. I was supposed to test my sword, I said, chuckling, and walked towards the legless orc and quickly killed it. Not bad, I said, looking at the blade. Its sharpness could compare to my first sword while being augmented. An evil grin formed on my face as I chuckled like a villain in his evil hideout. How sharp would the sword be if I augmented it, and that's even without using any elemental mana. Remembering the attack that destroyed my first sword, I kept myself from using it. While I tested infusing 4 elements into the blade, I didn't want to risk it just to satisfy my curiosity. But what if I augmented it with 4 elements and their deviants at the same time? No. Arthur, don't do it. I slapped myself to stop thinking about different ways to give Shiro a reason to kill me, and as everyone knows, people die when they are killed. Yeah. That would be bad. If there is something I learned about him is that he becomes scary when one of his swords is broken. My mind flashed back to when he chased me around Orario for hours. I shivered just remembering it. I shouldn't do anything stupid that would break it, and I don't have the money to buy a new one if this one breaks. I continued killing every monster that appeared and continued going down until the 16th floor before I decided it was enough for my test and decided to return home. How is it going, Sylv? I asked her when I returned home and saw her absorbing a magic stone I got on the deeper floors while I was stuck in the dungeon. I kept a few of the more mana-dense ones so she could get stronger, and sometimes I even take one for myself. Good, I have gotten much stronger, she said and got a smug look on her face. Yeah, then we should try out your new strength sometime. The deeper floors are almost always adventure-free, so you could use your true form there and train. I said and chuckled and started preparing food for us. How is your new sword? I could feel your excitement through our link. It felt like a child who got a present. She asked and looked at me teasingly. It's the best sword I ever had, I told her and showed her the sword. Wow, it looks similar to the sword in your memories. What was the name? Dawn's Ballad, she said, observing the sword. Yeah, it looks similar, but I feel this one is better, I told her with a grin. But let's not think about swords now. I want food. I chuckled at her. She hasn't changed at all, I'm on it. Chapter 27, Colosseum. Arthur Leywin. Waking up in the morning due to Sylvie's annoying voice demanding food, I sat up and glared at her. Just as the good part of my dream was about to happen, she woke me up. You just thought something bad about me, didn't you? She said, giving me her own glare. How did she know? While we have a mental connection due to the bond mark, I could block some of my thoughts from her, so how did she know? You shouldn't think bad things about a lady, she said with an angry expression that didn't work on her cute fox form. I don't see a lady anywhere. The only thing I see is a lazy lizard. I joked, but she didn't like it and attacked me with her claws. Sorry. I'm sorry, Sylv. I shouted and tried to get her off me. HMPF. You better be. She growled and turned around, walking to the kitchen. Sigh. My daughter is going through her rebellion phase. I fake cried but got ignored. I took a few minutes to leave my bed before entering the kitchen and started making breakfast for us. What should I make today? I muttered while looking through everything I had in the magical item that worked similarly to a fridge. I sighed, looking at the ingredients for a while, a few veggies and leftover meat. My food wasn't anything special, but it wasn't bad either. Ryu said it was good. But for some reason, the rest always offered to make the food instead. I wonder why. Sylvie never complained about my food. Let's just put it together and see what happens. You ready to stretch your legs, Sylv? I asked her through our mental link. Q. Yes, I haven't used my true form for months, she said excitedly. Our goal is the deeper floors where other adventurers wouldn't see us, and she could use her dragon form freely. Another plus of going deeper down the dungeon is that the floors become bigger, so she wouldn't hit the ceiling while trying to move around. Using Mirage Walk and Illusion Magic to be invisible, we quickly arrived at the 29th floor, where I decided to warm up slightly. The upcoming floors consist of 2 regions, but the important thing about this floor, at least for me, is that there are dungeon crops, such as fruits, that can be eaten. I used the chance to collect lots of fruit for 2 days, and we continued going down to the 37th floor. This floor is the start of what is considered the deep floors. The 37th floor is known as the White Palace, as the walls, ground, and ceiling are colored white, with the floor being a giant labyrinth. The floor is on a different scale than the floors above it, as the space between hallways, rooms, and walls is huge. The entrance to the 38th floor is located at the center of the floor, which is where the monster Rexudius is located, and around it are 5 huge circular walls that adventurers have to navigate through to reach the center. The walls are numbered 15 starting from the innermost wall, and the area between two walls is referred to as different rooms. The Udius area inside the first wall is the throne room, and from there, the knight's room, the warrior's room, the soldier's room, and the beast's room. But what I'm after today is the warrior's room. In the eastern area of the warrior's room, there is a place known as the Colosseum. It is the largest room on the floor, where monsters constantly fight each other. The room spawns monsters non-stop until a certain amount is reached, which is quickly replenished each time it decreases, being an unlimited supply of monsters. And with unlimited monsters comes an endless supply of mana stones. We plan to change between fighting the monsters. While one fights, the other will protect the other, who absorbs the mana from the magic stones. Having already told everyone I would be gone for a while, we aren't going to leave the dungeon until we both reach the white core stage. If my calculations are correct, it will take about 2 weeks to reach white core. And that includes a few hours of sleep every day. But me being at the silver core stage and having gone through the assimilation process, I could easily go for a whole day fighting without the need to sleep. I had already done it many times when I was stuck in the dungeon, but this time I had someone who would have my back. But fortunately for us, there is a passage under the Colosseum, a safe area where monsters don't spawn, and it has a spring of water. Entering the Colosseum, we quickly got surrounded by monsters, and a grin formed on my face as I got ready to kill them, Moon's Embrace already in my hand. And that's when the hours-long battle started. I didn't know if it was due to me not fighting any strong enemy for so long or if it was due to my new sword, but I enjoyed this battle. While the monsters are considered strong, and the sheer amount would make it impossible for any other adventurer to fight as easily as I did right now. Electricity crackled around me as the smell of burned flesh spread through the floor, and a large pile of monsters started to form around me. Some burned, some frozen, and some bisected. Now with a sword that could handle being infused with multiple elements, I felt like I was fighting with one arm tied behind my back the whole time all those years. The pile was getting bigger with every minute, and Sylvie couldn't eat the magic stones faster than more monsters dropped dead around us. Chapter 28, White Core. Arthur Leywin. Days passed with Sylvie and me following the same routine of fighting monsters and absorbing the mana from the stones. I managed to break into high silver during the first day due to already being at the edge of breaking through for a while now. Sylvie's core was getting close to breaking into initial silver, and her use of pure mana arts increased during our time here. Currently, I'm sitting on the mountain of monsters absorbing the mana from the stones one by one. Unlike Sylvie, who could just eat the stones, I needed to absorb the mana from them so the monsters stacked up. Thankfully I developed a technique that allowed me to bring the magic stone from the corpse using gravity and wind attribute mana. So while I sat on the mountain of monsters, I had a stack of mana stones around me. Signing, I continued to absorb the mana while watching Sylvie fight in her dragon form. She was getting much better quickly. She's been using my memories for her magic, and I'm thankful she didn't have an existential crisis after learning she isn't the OG Sylvie, as I call everything related to the debate novel. We both decided to think of that world and this world as being part of a multiverse where they were written as books in my previous world. Isn't my story also being written as a story? If I remember, ROB said something about it, but I forgot. Well, it's not like I can forbid him from doing it, and I don't want an angry ROB going after me. Yup, let's not anger ROB, but other gods are fair game. I continued to absorb the mana while also munching on the fruits I collected. Hours went by, and the small mountain became bigger instead of becoming smaller. SYLV. How is it going? Do you want to switch? I asked her. I'm not tired yet. I can fight longer. She shouted, killing another group of monsters. Well, then, I should continue to absorb the stones. I sighed. This reminds me of the other times I locked myself and absorbed all the magic stones, but this time I at least have entertainment while watching her fight. Now that I think about it, I should visit Remy before she does something stupid like leave the dungeon to find me. Yeah, that should be the first thing I do after we reach the white core stage, and I could also introduce SYLV to the Xenos so she could make a friend. I stopped that thought as the possibility of a male Xenos trying to flirt with my daughter flashed through my mind. Maybe I shouldn't do that. No, that wouldn't happen, right? Right. I sighed for what felt like the 100th time these couple of days. I shouldn't be so overprotective over my sister and dragon daughter. If they find a boyfriend, then it's fine by me. But he would need to get my approval first. I nodded to myself. If they find someone, they would need to be stronger than me. Well, let's not waste time and get stronger. I started to absorb the mana at a faster pace than before, and the mountain actually started to become smaller. Really? Sylvie asked me with a deadpan expression, probably having heard my thoughts and seeing the difference in my mana absorption rate. What? I'm just a good father and brother. I retorted without stopping. And what if a god wants to date your sister? Then we would have a nice talk, I replied with an innocent smile while my mana flared with slight killing intent. Yeah. Talk. Another week passed, and I had a smile on my face looking at the cracks around my core. During our 3 weeks here, my core progressed from mid-silver to almost reaching white core. At the same time, Sylvie had the biggest progress going from dark yellow to mid-silver. It was a massive growth for her, and I could feel she would soon unlock her human form. During my time stuck in the dungeon, she found out that she had a seal on her preventing her from entering her human form. I don't know why she had it, but that didn't matter, as it would break soon. So she has been excited during these weeks trying to break it, and it has been leaking through our link. I'm not different, though. Just watching the cracks around my core, I can't wait to reach the white core. Hours flew by, the cracks became more prominent, and the pure white light started seeping through the cracks. More hours went by as I absorbed stone after stone until I finished absorbing another one. The cracks spread through the whole core, and I was left with a pure white core. I grinned while looking at it and feeling the difference between being in high silver and being in the white stage. My mana reserves increased by about 10 times, and I felt invincible, like not even gods would stand a chance against me. After calming down from my core high, I started to think about my journey so far. From being reincarnated, spending all those years making my core, and going through the assimilation process so my beast wouldn't destroy my body. I went through Grandpa's hellish training all the years before arriving in Orario. All the people I met, and all those times I scared Uncle Vince after returning home with completely torn clothes while I was living in his apartment. Then all the time I spent with the Astria Familia, from going to the dungeon to just spending time together. Just remembering the spider incident, I could help but chuckle. Then Bella becoming an adventurer. Time sure flies by quickly. 12 years of work, and here I am. The last step would be the integration stage, but I know it will take years to achieve it. So, for now, I think it's time to join a familia.